Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei was Crimson Commander and Harem with Sona? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the N7 Captain for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. Now I know I said I was gonna update next Friday, but I just couldn't help myself. Besides, I know that everyone is gonna want the Yamato class, so I just decided to update now. Well, here they are. The pick at the top is the Yamato class. Just to give y'all a little something to look at. Credit goes to Dishwasher for making this art. Today was a good day. Everyone in the ORC, except for Rias, went out to have fun and do karaoke. Along the way they ran into Sona and the rest of the student council. Issei has asked them if they wanted to tag along, which they accepted. When they arrived, they had run into the Kendo Club members, Keita's and Murayama, along with the female pervert, Aika. The moment they saw Kiba, the Kendo girls all but demanded that they participate with the group. No one had any objections and, as such, the girls joined them. They had sung for many hours. They sang all sorts of songs. From rock to rap, they sang them all. They were all especially surprised to learn that Issei could actually sing. Rias never appeared, despite saying that she would after finishing whatever it was that kept her busy. This saddened Issei. He was hoping to show her that he loved her. He even got everyone else in the ORC in on it. Don't worry, Issei. I'm sure it just took longer than expected, and that's why she's not here. Kiba tried to reassure him. Why, yeah. Maybe you're right. Issei replied. HM? What are you talking about? Aika asked. Issei was planning on confessing to Rias today, but she never came. Asia said. The student council and the humans all nodded at that. It was no secret that Issei held great affection for Rias and vice versa. Well, let's go home. If she's not done, then she should still be there, Issei said. The others nodded. The student council and the humans decided to follow them back to Issei's house. They wanted to see this with their own eyes. When they reached his home, only the humans were surprised at the size. The devils already knew. This is your house? Aika shouted. The Kendo girls could only nod dumbly. Yeah? Come on in, I guess, he invited. When they entered, they made their way to Issei's room. When they were close enough, they could hear voices coming from inside. One was Rias and the other sounded male. Fear gripped Issei's heart, but he tried to tell himself that it was probably a client, or another devil she knew. What he heard next just made the fear rise. Come on. You need to go, they could be back any minute now. They heard Rias say. Come on, babe. Just a little while longer. I doubt they'll be here so soon, the male voice said. It was silent for a bit before they heard Rias. All right. Issei gently and quietly opened the door and peeked inside. What he saw broke his heart. It was Rias on top of another man making out with him. The others were worried when they saw his face morph into one of heartbreak. They all tried to peek in, but the only ones who actually saw anything was Issei, Sona, and Akino. Akino gasped, but it wasn't quite. The gasp alerted the ones in the room. They turned to the door and saw the faces. Rias gasped and got off the man, who looked at the door with worry. Seeing that they had been discovered, Akino opened the door and showed Rias everyone who was trying to look in. It also showed everyone what was going on in Issei's room. Everyone was shocked at what they saw. A life full of rejections, negligence, given cold shoulders and everything. This was the life of our hero Issei hiatus since his birth, when it was revealed that Everything was quiet before Issei spoke. Why? That one word had so much sadness behind it. Everyone just looked at Issei with pity. Rias couldn't say anything, just look at the others with wide eyes. Issei couldn't take the silence and ran out of the house. Wait! Everyone shouted, but Issei didn't or wouldn't listen. He just ran. Kiba, Saji, and Sona were the first ones to recover before the boys ran out to follow Issei. Sona, on the other hand, ordered everyone to go search just in case the boys couldn't find him. Even the human girls ran out to look for him. They felt pity for him. No one should have to see the person they love another. Hey, I think we should go easy on him for the next few days when we find him. He doesn't need any more pain, Murayama said. Keita's only nodded. They might not like him and hated that perversion of his, but even they knew better than to kick a man while he's down. You know, he's not that bad a person when he's not acting like a pervert, Aika said. The other had to admit that. He was actually likable when he wasn't constantly staring at a woman's Back at the Haida household, only Sona, Akino, Rias, and the unknown man remained. Sona had taken off her glasses and was currently trying to prevent a migraine from happening, and Akino was currently glaring at her friend and the unknown person. No one said anything for a few seconds before Sona pointed to the man. You leave now. Akino even let out some of her lightning to emphasize that demand. For the first time, she wanted to cause pain, not out of anything ual, but out of anger. The man nodded, scared, and looked to Rias. She opened a portal that sent the man to his home and turned to look at her angry friends. I will be letting Lord Bremy know, was all Sona said as she went out to help look for Issei. Rias turned to Akino, who just gave her a glare and stormed out. Rias stayed in the room for a few minutes before eventually leaving and helping everyone search for her pawn. It had been hours and there was still no sign of Issei. This caused everyone to worry. They had searched almost everywhere, but they couldn't find anything. As they were standing outside Issei's house, the devils felt a power surge. There was a familiar one and an unknown one. It was Issei, and he was at the park. The devils ran to the park with the confused humans in tow. When they arrived, they continued to run to his location. As they got closer, they suddenly heard a scream. It was Issei. Soon a bright flash was seen behind some trees. They ran to the trees and looked around. Asia looked down and saw a small puddle of blood. She gasped, which alerted the others. When they confirmed that the blood was his, they felt fear and hope. Fear because he was attacked and his attacker could still be around. Hope because the puddle of blood was big enough to confirm that he was attacked but small enough to confirm that he wasn't dead. Everyone was silent before Asia spoke. Issei. They could hear her sadness. Saji closed his eyes and lowered his head. Kiba clenched his fist and started to berate himself for not being faster and following Issei. Akino approached the girl and laid a hand on her shoulder. He's gone. Asia continued. She then turned to Rias with a look of hatred. He's gone, and it's your fault, she shouted before she turned and buried her face in Akino's shoulder and cried. Nothing else was said and everyone went home. Unknown to everyone, there was a small figure watching them. With Issei, he didn't know where he was going. He just wanted to get away from there. He kept running and running until his legs gave out. When he looked up, he saw that he was in a park. The very same one he was killed in. Funny, he commented dryly. He then crawled to a tree and sat under it to rest. He didn't have any particular thoughts. His mind was blank. What felt like hours was only a few minutes, and Issei was getting ready to go back. Before he could, though, he heard something above him, and when he looked up, he saw something that put him on edge. Above him was a petite girl with pale skin, yellow eyes, and white hair. She was barely wearing anything except for a black dress that showed her stomach and lower body. What really caught his attention, though, was the mass of black and yellow tentacles curled around metal pipes of the same color. She also had what looked to be a metal bow in her head. Had Issei been in his right mind, he probably would have perved out on how she looked. But right now, he didn't care for any of that. There was something about this girl that set off alarms in his head. He summoned his sacred gear and got ready to fight. This seemed to amuse the girl. My. You're certainly interesting. What is that thing on your arm? Even her voice put him on edge. Who are you? He asked. She only smiled at him, which pissed him off. Listen, shorty, I don't have time for this. So tell me who you are or you're going to regret it. I think you should learn some manners, boy, the girl said and shot a beam at him. He dodged, but not before it clipped him in the side, causing him to scream in pain. The girl looked off to the side. It looks like some more people are coming. It looks like I'll have to speed things up. She then turned back to Issei. You really are interesting. Maybe you're the one we've been searching for. Let's see how you fare. She then opened a portal and sent Issei through it, causing a bright light to flash as he went, and it closed. The girl then retreated higher up into the sky and watched this new group enter. Through the portal, Issei was suddenly thrown out of the portal and onto something hard. When he regained his senses, he heard clicking sounds and looked up. He froze. In front of him were people with guns and wearing some kind of blue uniform. Put your hands on your head, he heard one of them shout. He complied and put his hands on his head. Two of the uniformed people went up to him and put his hands behind his back and cuffed him. As he was walking, he realized that he was on an aircraft carrier. He had never seen one in person before. He turned to one of the men next to him. Where am I? He asked. Quite, was the man's reply. They lead him to a room with the oval table and made him sit down. They left with one man standing watch over him. While he could easily escape, he decided to just stay put. Soon a man, that looked to be in his late early in a white uniform came in and sat down in front of him. "Hello, son, would you mind telling me how you got on this ship?" the man asked kindly. "I don't know, sir. I was talking to this wired floating girl, and the next thing I know, I'm in a portal and I land here," he explained to the best of his abilities. The man nodded before leaning closer to Issei. "What's your name?" "Hayate Issei, or as you Westerners would say, Issei Hayate." "Well then, Issei. My name is Captain Benjamin Matthews." He held a hand out for a handshake. Issei grabbed his hand and shook it. The man pointed to a model of an aircraft carrier on a table by the wall. "Welcome to the USS Enterprise, CVN-. The captain said. Issei stared in shock. "Be warned. I will use the nation's way of saying commander. Like the Sakura Empire would call him Shikiken, while the Iron Blood would call him commandant. Eagle Union and Royal Navy would call him commander." It had been 1 month since the disappearance of Issei Hayate. No one knew how he disappeared, but everyone knew that Rias had something to do with it. If the kendo duel was to be believed, further proof came when everyone in the ORC seemed to give her the cold shoulder and only talked with her when necessary. It was quite the shock when Akino Himejima, Rias's best friend, had asked to be moved to a different seat. When asked, all Akino said was that Rias had caused Issei to run away, which led to his disappearance. Murayama, Kates, and Aika were all told of the supernatural Monday after school. They were obviously shocked to learn that the most popular ones in school were all devils. They were allowed to have a few days off so they could wrap their head around what they had just learned. It was now Friday and the school had called every student to the gym for an assembly. When they arrived, they saw a desk facing a set of double doors. The chair was facing them, with another door to the right of the desk. It was bizarre. Everyone knew those things weren't there the day before. Was this a prank or something? Once everyone got settled, the principal came out. "All right, Kuoh Academy. You might be wondering why we called this assembly," she started. "It's about a fundraiser. We just thought it would be something fun for you all to do. You all will have to sell cookies." Everyone was confused, excited, or some combination of the two. Why would they need to do this? The teachers managed to get everyone quieted down, but before any more could be said, there was a knock on the doors behind them. The ones that weren't there yesterday. Everyone turned to look and saw one of the doors open. 2 little girls entered the gym. The first one had short brown hair with pigtails and green eyes, and the other had pink hair with a red ribbon on the right side and pink eyes. Both of them had cat ears and tails in their respective colors. The pink-haired one even had a red bow on her tail. Both of them were dressed like elementary school children. The sight of the two made most of the girls, and some of the boys, to go awa and caused the rest of the girls to squeal at how cute they looked. The sound caused the two to jump and look in their direction. The pink-haired girl hid behind the other one, who was equally scared at the sight of so many strangers. "WWW, who are you?" the brown-haired girl asked. Akino, who was the closest to the two, walked up to them and crouched down while smiling gently, trying to calm them down. "Hello? Don't worry, we won't hurt you. Can you tell me your name?" "We're not supposed to talk to strangers," the pink-haired girl said. This caused everyone to smile. At least they knew not to talk to people they don't know. "Well, my name is Akino Himejima. Now we're not strangers, right?" She smiled. At the mention of her name, the brown-haired girl suddenly gasped and pointed at Akino's face. "Shikiken told us about you. He called you something that starts with an S. I think he called you sausage." This caused Akino to gain a tick mark, even though she was still smiling on the outside. The other students and teachers watching were chuckling and giggling. "I think it was sadist Mitsuki," the pink-haired girl corrected. "Oh." Then the door to the right of the desk opened, and out walked a man with short brown messy hair. He had some stubble on his face, and was wearing a white t-shirt tucked into white dress pants and white socks. He looked like he had just gotten out of bed. When everyone got a good look at his face, they were shocked. He looked older than they remembered, but it was him. It was Issei Hayate. "Issei?" Akino asked hesitantly. The man turned to her and squinted at her. "Akino? Huh. It's been a while since I dreamt about you." He blinked. "It's been a while since I dreamt that I was back in Kuoh at all." He then looked down and saw the 2 little girls. "Oh, hello there, Mitsuki, Kisaragi," he greeted. "This isn't a dream, Issei," Akino told him. He looked confused before she walked up and put an lightning-covered hand on his arm, shocking him. "Oh. The third you're not supposed to feel pain in a dream," he said and looked at Akino. Am I really back?" he hesitantly asked. She nodded before he rushed forward and hugged her. "I'm back. I'm really back." He smiled. He suddenly pushed away from Akino and looked down at himself. "I'll be back. Give me like minutes," he told her before he ran back into what everyone now knew was his room. While Issei was doing whatever it was he was doing, everyone sat and waited for him to come out. The two little girls, Mitsuki and Kisaragi, sat next to Akino and Kaneko. The two cat girls and one secret cat girl were trading and eating candy. The females all gushed at how cute the three of them were. Suddenly a red-haired man in armor and a gray-haired maid came out of a circle in the ground. The man was Surzek's Lucifer, and the maid was his wife and queen, Graphia Lucifuge. Everyone except the devils, Aika, Kates, and Murayama were shocked at the sudden appearance of two people. When the two notices all the humans, the man held a sheepish look, while the woman didn't really react. "Oh. Hello everyone." The man waved. "Lord Lucifer. What can we do for you?" Akino asked as she bowed. The rest of the devils bowed as well. The humans were shocked and horrified to hear the name Lucifer. After all, it was the name of the devil. "You excuse me. Why did you call him Lord Lucifer?" a second-year boy asked. "Well, because he's the leader of the devils, duh," Saji said. Everyone's minds blue-screened at that. When everyone's minds rebooted, they all shouted in unison, "He's the devil?" "Yeah," Akino casually answered. The humans looked to the man, who waved at them with a wide smile. "He didn't look or act evil." "He doesn't look evil," a first-year girl said. Surzek blinked. "I don't know whether to be insulted or not," he said. Before anything else could be said, the door to Issei's room opened and out walked Issei in what was obviously a uniform for a Navy officer. He was adjusting his hat as he walked over to the desk and opened one of the drawers. He pulled out what many knew to be a pistol holster and attached it to his belt. He then pulled out a big case and opened it, pulling out a pistol. He loaded the magazine into the gun and put it in the holster before bringing out a smaller, slimmer case and opened it. He pulled out a pair of glasses and put them on. Am I the only one who thinks Issei looks good with glasses? No homo though. Everyone was shocked and scared when he pulled out the gun but calmed down when he put it in the holster. The shock doubled when they saw him put on glasses though. He noticed the looks and turned to look at them. "What?" he asked. "Since when did you wear glasses?" Murayama asked. "Ever since I turned I noticed things had started to become blurry. So I went and found out that I needed glasses." "I mean, I'm not that surprised. My dad wears them too, so I probably got it from him." He shrugged. It was then he noticed Surzek and Graphia. "Lord Lucifer!" he shouted. However, instead of bowing he gave the man a salute. This surprised Surzek, but considering what Issei was wearing, and the rank that he just now noticed, he returned it. "Addy's soldier?" Surzek asked. "Sailor," Issei corrected. "Or you could call me by my rank, which is commander." "Ah." Surzek nodded. There was a knock on the double doors before it was opened, and in walked two females. One was a white-haired woman with a side braid dressed as a maid with a collar that had a broken chain, and the other looked like a miniature version of the woman but with a ribbon replacing the collar and chain. One was a white-haired woman with a side braid dressed as a maid with a collar that had a broken chain, and the other looked like a miniature version of the woman but with a ribbon replacing the collar and chain. "Oh, hello, Belfast, little Bell. Good morning, master." They both replied before the older one pushed in a trolley that held 2 pots, sugar, cream, and some cups. "What will it be today, master? Tea or coffee?" the older one asked, as Issei went to sit behind the desk. "I'll take coffee today, Belfast. You know how I like it," he replied. The older one, Belfast, nodded before putting sugar and cream into the coffee. She put it on a small tray and gave it to the smaller one, who had to be Little Bell, and gently pushed her toward Issei. As she was walking, everyone could see the tray starting to shake. She was clearly nervous. From the corner of his eye, Surzek saw Graphia stand next to him. He turned to look at her and noticed that she was looking intently at the little girl. Everyone was. When Little Bell was close enough, she put the tray on the desk and stepped back. Issei, Belfast, and Graphia gently clapped at the little girl's success, causing her to blush. Soon everyone else clapped as well, reminding Issei that they were there. "Oh, that's right. Ahem. Slow me to introduce these two lovely ladies," he started. This he pointed to Belfast as HMS Belfast. She gave a curtsy. The boys would glance at her chest but looked away when they saw Issei glare at them. And this he pointed to Little Belle as also HMS Belfast, but she was created differently. Because of that we just call her Little Belle. Little Belle also gave a curtsy, but it wasn't like Big Belfast. Wait. What? Kiba asked as he walked up to them. Oh hey, Kiba! Issei greeted. What I mean is that these two hold the power of old WW warships. Specifically the light cruiser HMS Belfast of the Edinburgh subclass. The Edinburgh subclass is a subclass of the Towns-class light cruisers. Issei explained. This seemed to go over some of the students' heads, but he didn't particularly care. Just look her up. Right now this world's version of Belfast doesn't have a human body. She's currently tied down at the Thames River in the UK as a museum ship. He told them. He then turned to Belfast. Could you send for the others? And could you and the others bring some refreshments and snacks for our guests here, Belfast? He asked. Of course, master. She bowed and left with Little Belle in tow. Now then. What were you all doing here? And Mitsuki, Kisaragi, come here please. He asked. The two cat girls walked up to Issei. While he was talking to them, everyone could finally wrap their heads around what just happened. Issei is a Navy commander. He has a maid and a mini-maid that are supposedly light cruisers from WW. He has a gun on him now, and he wears glasses now. Also, he wasn't being a pervert like he used to be, even when Belfast was right next to him. He just looked her in the eye instead of at her chest. This caused some of the girls that he and his friends would peep at to be confused and suspicious of him. Keites finally asked the important question on everyone's mind. What happened to you, Haide? You aren't perving out like you usually do. He looked at her and answered her question with a smile. Being in the military does wonders for a person's behavior. That actually kinda makes sense. Murayama said. Oh. Let me introduce these two. Issei said as he laid both of his hands on the two cat girls' heads. This he pointed to Mitsuki is the destroyer Ijan Mitsuki. She gave an energetic wave, and this he pointed to Kisaragi is the destroyer Ijan Kisaragi. She gave a shy wave to everyone before half hiding behind Issei's leg. They hold the power of the Mitsuki-class destroyers, with Mitsuki here being the lead ship and older sister of the class. He said with a smile as he rubbed their heads, causing them to smile. Ijan, what does that stand for again? A first-year girl asked. It stands for Imperial Japanese Navy. A third-year girl answered. Soon a knock was heard and the door was opened once more. In walked 4 more women. One was another white-haired woman with a button-up white shirt, black tie, black belt under her S, black skirt, black thigh-high socks, white officer's hat, and a black coat. On her shoulder was a bald eagle. The next was a small blonde-haired girl with a dark blue dress with white frills under the skirt, white gloves, white thigh-high socks and a crown on her head. The next woman was also blonde but was taller than the first blonde and she kinda looked like the first white-haired woman that entered. She wore a black military uniform that showed her cleavage, a black skirt, black thigh-high socks with white fur around it, a black officer's hat, and a black and red cape. She wore a black military uniform that showed her cleavage, a black skirt, black thigh-high socks with white fur around it, a black officer's hat, and a black and red cape. The final girl was also short. She had brown hair, a pair of fox ears on her head, and she was dressed as a shrine maiden. Issei smiled at the 4 before motioning for them to get into a straight line. Allow me to introduce these 4. He said. This is HMS Queen Elizabeth. Lead ship of the Queen Elizabeth class battleships. He pointed to the small blonde. Greetings, subjects. She said, smiled haughtily. This is Ijan Nagato. Lead ship of the Nagato class battleships. He pointed to the small fox girl. Greetings. She bowed. This is KMS Bismarck. Lead ship of the Bismarck class battleships. Bismarck only nodded in greeting. And finally, this is USS Enterprise. Second ship of the Yorktown class aircraft carriers. Enterprise waved and smiled at everyone. Everyone was shocked. They were in the presence of some very famous ships. That didn't stop some of the boys from perving out on Bismarck and Enterprise though. These 4, along with Belfast, are my secretaries. He told them. Now, while we wait for Belfast, I should probably get to work. Issei went and sat at his desk and looked at a stack of papers. Paperwork. He shuddered. Surzex and the teachers also shuddered. They all felt pity for him. They knew what it was like to do paperwork. Unfortunately for Issei, it looked he had to do more than them. You seem oddly calm about all of this, her commandant. Bismarck commented. She's right. Any particular reason, Commander? Enterprise asked. No. I just have a feeling I know who is responsible for this. He answered. The others then understood. Shall I bring her here then? Nagato asked. No need. Issei said before he picked up the phone from his desk. Could Prince Eugen and Warspite please bring Akashi to my office? Now we just wait. They'll have her here in a few minutes, he said and turned back to his paperwork. Soon the door opened once more in Belfast, with 4 more maids entered with drinks and snacks. Issei turned to Belfast. I'll let you introduce them. I have work to do. She nodded and went to introduce them. Allow me to introduce these maids. This is HMS Sirius. This is HMS Glasgow, HMS Curlew, and finally, HMS Sheffield. Many of the boys stared at them with lust before. Once again, Issei glared at them. Stop staring at MY girls like that or... He trailed off, and while they couldn't really see it, they knew his right hand was on his gun. The boys quickly nodded in fear. Issei turned to the maids. You girls can return to what you were doing before. They nodded and bowed before leaving. Surzex turned to Issei. I'm kinda jealous of all these maids you have, Issei. He immediately regretted it when he felt Grafia glare at him. Heh. By the way, where's Rias? I half expected her to come up to me by now. Issei asked. This confused all the devils. Didn't he hate her? Don't you hate her? Kaneko asked as she played with the 2 Mitsuki-class destroyers. I've had 10 years to get over it. I'm not angry anymore, he replied. Wait, 10 years? Issei, it's only been a month. Akino told him. Issei looked up, surprised. Impossible. I'm right now. How can I turn in 1 month? He asked. Everyone was stunned to learn that he was older than when he left. Different time zones or something? Asia asked. Totally forgot about her. Issei and everyone else nodded at that. It made sense. Suddenly the doors were kicked open, and in walked a gray-haired woman with a rather revealing outfit alongside another short blonde-haired girl that wasn't wearing pants. They were escorting a small green-haired cat girl. Plus, here she is, Commander. She tried to run but Prince Eugen blocked her off and caught her. The short pantsless girl said. Issei nodded before turning to everyone else, who the 3 were ignoring while they looked at Issei. You all know the song and dance by now, but bear with me here. Issei told the others. This is HMS Warspite, Queen Elizabeth-class battleship. He pointed to the short blonde girl. This is KMS Prince Eugen, Admiral Hipper-class heavy cruiser. He pointed to the gray-haired woman. And this is the repair ship IJ and Akashi. They all nodded to the students, with Akashi quaking at the possible punishment she was gonna get. Before Issei could question Akashi, a voice was heard by the door that Prince kicked open. Era. What happened here, Shiki-kun-sama? Issei and some of the others started to sweat. Era. What happened here, Shiki-kun-sama? Issei and some of the others started to sweat. They looked to the door and saw 2 women with black hair and white officer uniforms. One had animal ears sticking straight up and the other didn't seem to have any. The one that didn't seem to have animal ears had long black hair tied into a ponytail with a white ribbon. Both held katanas. The boys would have looked at them pervertedly but were too afraid of Issei to do so. Hello there, Asia said, as she was the closest one to them. What a cute girl, the one with animal ears said as she suddenly hugged Asia. Poor Asia squeaked when she was suddenly hugged. Who are you? Asia asked. The one with animal ears introduced herself first. I'm Ijin Atego, second ship of the Takao-class heavy cruisers. The other one bowed and also introduced herself. Greetings, I am Ijin Takao, lead ship of the Takao-class heavy cruisers. This confused some of the others. Why did Atego have ears and Takao doesn't? Why does your sister have ears but you don't, Ms. Takao? Asia asked. HM? I do have ears, she said as she wiggled the tufts of hair on her head. Cute, was the thought of everyone. I almost forgot. Akashi, could you please explain how you did this? Issei asked while motioning around what used to be his office. Me, Yubari, and you were messing around with that wisdom cube canyon of ours when Yubari accidentally turned it on. It fired at your office, but when we checked, There was nothing destroyed or missing, so we figured that nothing happened and didn't tell you because nothing happened, Naya. Akashi explained. Issei closed his eyes and nodded. I see. Well, since nothing bad happened, I guess it's okay. Akashi gave a sigh of relief before Issei continued. That doesn't mean you're not going to be punished. Don't worry, the other two will be punished as well, he said as he motioned to Nagato and Bismarck, who understood and left to find the other two. Naya? Issei thought about it for a bit before he told her. Your punishment is that you cannot work at your shop. You are banned from working there for 1 week. Shirani will cover for you. Naya? He motioned for Prince and Warspite to escort Akashi out. The moves to Akashi's sides and dragged her out after she tried to jump on Issei, begging him to reconsider. She even promised to give him discounts if he reconsidered. He didn't fall for it. Over with the students, Rias had finally worked up the nerve to go and confront Issei. Everyone went quiet when they saw her approaching him. Issei, she said softly when she was close enough. He looked up and gave her a small smile. Hello, Rias. That name caused the remaining ship girls to glare at Rias. Even Mitsuki and the ever-shy Kisaragi flared at her. Takao and Atego has noticeably tensed and gripped their katanas tighter, ready to draw them at Issei's command. Rias, and some of the other students, jumped when Takao and Atego had moved in between Issei and Rias with their hands on their swords. Stand down. Issei calmly ordered. The two swordswomen reluctantly did as ordered but stood down and went to stand next to Issei. Takao on his right and Atego on his left. He then looked to everyone else. Please return to your classrooms, or wherever you need to be. This is between me and Rias. I would appreciate it if you all left. He asked. The teachers nodded before escorting everyone to their classes. He then looked to Akino and Kaneko. Can you two please take Mitsuki and Kisaragi somewhere and play with them for a bit? He asked them. They nodded and left with the two little cat girls. He did a little hand motion towards the ship girls, who understood what he was signaling. They nodded and left, with Takao as the only one staying. Once it was only the three of them, Rias started to speak. Issei, but he cut her off. I don't want to hear an apology just yet. I want to know why. Why did you do it? He asked. I can't really explain it. I went to the client to see what he wanted. One thing led to another, and I ended up ing him. Ever since then we would meet up. I know how that may sound, but I can't explain it any better than that. Rias explained. Issei closed his eyes and nodded. I think I know what you're trying to say. And I guess I'll accept that for now. It's an explanation, not a good one, but an explanation nonetheless. It was silent for a bit before Rias spoke once more. I'm sorry, Issei. I'm really sorry. Rias said softly as tears started to fall from her eyes. Issei didn't say anything and Rias took this as a sign that the conversation was over. She walked over to the doors to leave. Rias, she heard Issei say. She turned to look at him and saw that he was looking at her. I am willing to forgive you. I won't ever forget this, but I've had 10 years to get over it. I don't think things will ever be the same between us. I'll forgive you, but don't think I'll blindly follow what you say like I used to. He said. I also think it'll be best for everyone if you and I don't interact unless it's necessary. At least for now, because I want a good explanation. So I'll give you time to get your thoughts together. I don't want the two of us to cause a disruption between everyone, Rias. So please go. He said as he used his hat to cover his eyes. Rias nodded before she left the gym and back to her class. It was still silent in the gym. Takao had looked at her commander and saw that there were tears streaming down his face. Did you really get over it, Shikikan-sama? She asked. Issei didn't reply for a bit before he grabbed a tissue and wiped his face. I did. It still hurts though. I gave up a part of my body for her. I did what she wanted when she asked. I saved her from a loveless marriage. And this is how she repays me? Issei's tone started out soft and sorrowful before becoming angrier and angrier with each passing sentence before he finally blew up and stood from his chair. When Takao saw him like this, her already droopy ears drooped even further. When Issei lifted his head up and she saw his face, she gasped and took a step back. His clenched teeth had all sharpened, his eyes had turned from their warm brown color into shining emerald green, and his pupils had turned into slits, like a cat's or reptile's eyes. She and the other shipgirls had only seen their commander like this 2 other times, and they never wanted to see it again. When Issei saw that Takao had taken a step away from him, he started to calm down and all but threw himself back into his chair before he held his head with one hand. Takao took a few seconds to collect herself before she put her sword on Issei's desk and pushed him and his chair a bit away from the desk. Issei lifted his head in confusion before he smiled. Takao returned the smile before she sat down on his lap and put her right hand on his left cheek before caressing it with her thumb. They stayed like that for a few minutes, just staring into each other's eyes before Issei cupped Takao's smaller right hand with his larger left hand. He ran his thumb across the back of her hand before she pushed her forehead against his. They both closed their eyes and stayed silent for a few seconds before Takao spoke. Shiki no Issei, I won't pretend to know how you feel, but just know that you have me and the others. We'll always be there for you. He stayed silent for a few seconds before he smiled. What did I ever do to deserve you girls? She smiled before she answered. You were kind to us. You didn't do anything to harm us. You looked after us. And when we had no one else to turn to or nowhere else to go, you were there for us. She told him. You changed us just like we changed you. You were cold, but kind at first. Then, as we opened up to you, you opened up to us, and we saw a new side of you. A side that we all fell in love with. She continued. She stopped and just stared at him before she pushed her head forward and brought their lips together. It was a short and sweet, and it wasn't their first one, but it still felt like it did when they first ed. Plus, I love you, Takao? Issei sighed. And I love you, Issei. She returned. They both stayed like that for a few minutes. I should point out now that this is also a minor crossover with the Earth Defense Force games, meaning there will be references to EDF, and when Issei awoke the next morning, he saw the sleeping face of Little Belle and behind her was Belfast. He noticed that Belfast was awake and looking at Little Belle. She then looked at him and smiled before getting up out of bed. As she did, Issei took the time to notice what the two girls were wearing. Belfast was wearing one of his button-up shirts while Little Belle had on some pajamas with cats on it. Belfast moved around to his side of the bed before climbing on top of him. Good morning, master. She whispered sensually into his ear. He shivered and put his arms around her and pulled her closer. Good morning, Belfast. He returned. The two stayed like that for a minute and enjoyed each other's company before Belfast got up and started to get dressed in her usual maid outfit. After giving Issei a free show, she woke up Little Belle and went back to her room to go help her get dressed. Issei got up a few seconds after they left and went to get in the shower. After he did the usual morning routine and getting dressed in his uniform, he walked over to his desk and sat down, ready to get started on his paperwork. As he sat down, he noticed that there were no papers on his desk. He adjusted his glasses and looked around but didn't find anything. He was confused but figured that the papers just haven't arrived yet. He picked up his phone to call Bismarck. She and Nagato would be the only ones awake at this time. Hello, Bismarck. Do you happen to know where my paperwork is? He asked when she answered her phone. You don't have any paperwork today, she told him. Issei sat there for a bit, not even noticing when Bismarck tried to get his attention or her telling him she was on her way and hanging up. No paperwork? How? Why? He always had paperwork every day. Was Saratoga prancing him again? Were the others in on it? These were his thoughts. He was so lost in them, he never noticed that Bismarck had entered Kuoh Academy's gym/his office. It wasn't until she smacked his desk did he notice her. Oh, Bismarck. When did you get here? He asked. Just now, she replied. She then explained how she and the other secretaries were going to do his paperwork today, and that he should have the day off. Well, it has been a while since I had a day off, he mused. He then nodded. All right. I'll leave it to you girls, he said. Bismarck nodded and left his office for her own. He then sat back in his chair and wondered what he could do. While he was thinking, he opened one of his drawers to put his gun and spare magazines away when he noticed a flyer, a devil summoning flyer. He remembered Sona came up to him yesterday and gave it to him. It was so he could contact her or any member of the student council. He lost his old phone, which had everyone's numbers, and he didn't really feel like talking to Rias so soon. What the hell? He thought, and used the flyer to summon Sona. When she arrived, she saw Issei in his chair and walked up to him. Hello, Commander Hayato, she greeted. He raised an eyebrow but returned her greeting. Hello, Sona? What's with the formal greeting? She shrugged. It's only right to show you the proper respect. You are, after all, a military officer, she replied. Issei then waved a hand. No. Don't call me commander. You are not a man of the military, and you most certainly aren't a member of my base. He told her. Besides, it's my day off. That means I'm not a commander right now. He continued. Sona was surprised at the way he spoke to her but nodded anyway. Now then. The reason I called you here is to ask you a question. Do my parents still live here? He asked. Well, yes, but why did you call me when you could have called and asked one of the other in Rias peerage? She asked him in return. It's because I don't know where they are right now, and me and Rias aren't talking right now. Otherwise I would have asked them. He responded. She nodded at that before answering his question. Anyway, yes, they do still live here. He nodded before telling her that was all. She nodded and went back to wherever she was. He leaned back in his chair and thought about going to see his parents. On one hand, they should know that he was alive and back. On the other hand, they might not believe it and think him an imposter. He sat there and thought about it before he decided to just risk it and go see them. He got up from his chair and went back to his room to change. It wouldn't do for people to see a military officer walking up to their neighbor's house. That usually never meant a good thing. He opened his closet and started to look through it for some casual clothes to wear. It took him a while to find something to wear, but he eventually picked out a pair of gray pants, a yellow shirt, and a black jacket that had yellow bands on the sleeves close to his hands and a yellow rectangle over his right shoulder that had the EDF emblem. He put on a pair of boots and went to the door that would lead to the city of Kuoh. His clothes. The emblem that replaces the Starfleet Delta. I should also say that Azur Lane and its factions are a part of the EDF's naval forces. Just as he put his hand on the door, he heard a sound behind him. He turned and saw a little blonde-haired girl with a short white dress, white stockings, white detached sleeves and black shoes. And behind her was a woman who also had blonde hair but was cut shorter. She was wearing a red and white uniform with a black skirt, thigh-high socks and a red cape. The little girl ran up to Issei and jumped up into his arms to hug him. He just barely caught her. Hello, Eldridge. He told the little girl in his arms. And hello to you, Wales. He greeted the older blonde. Hello, Commander. She bowed her head. Where are you going? She asked. To see my parents. He told her, adjusting his grip on Eldridge. The little girl pulled away a bit and looked at him. Can we go too? She asked. Issei thought about it for a second before nodding. Sure. But let's get you into some proper clothes. He told her and looked at Wales. She nodded and took Eldridge to get changed. He didn't have to wait for long because minutes later Eldridge ran back into his office and back into his arms. He took a moment to examine the two. Eldridge was wearing a yellow sundress and her white stockings and black shoes. Simple and cute on her. Wales kept her skirt and thigh-highs but changed her red and white top and red cape for a plain white long-sleeved shirt. Ready? He asked Wales as he picked up Eldridge. She nodded and the three left the school. As they were walking, Eldridge looked everywhere and pointed at things that caught her attention and asked what they were. Issei answered them all with a small smile. Wales also smiled as she looked at the two. This always happened whenever Issei spent time with the destroyers. Since they usually took the form of little girls, it was understandable that some would act the part. Others probably didn't act the part and actually had the mentality of the bodies they inhabit. The Mitsuki class was one example. They looked like preschool or elementary school girls and acted like it, but they were old WW warships and were much older than their bodies suggested. Around them Wales could hear some of the people talk. She blushed at what some of them said. Aw, look at them. Taking their daughter out on this nice day. She heard a group of housewives gossip. We should do something like that when we have a child. This was said by a young woman to the man next to her. Yes, dear, was his response. Damn that guy. She looks hot. Why is it the good-looking dudes? Those last three were said by some boys. Probably first years at a different school. Otherwise they would have recognized her commander and ran away. She could also hear some people comment on his clothes. Cool-looking jacket. A boy said. Do you think it's custom? His friend asked. Probably. It could be a cosplay thing. Look at the badge on it. EDF? Another of his friends said. As they passed an elderly couple sitting on a bench, she heard what they said. Ah, young love? It reminds me of us. The elderly man said. His wife nodded and waved at Eldridge when she turned to look at them. Eldridge returned the wave and smiled. Issei and Wales also smiled at the elderly couple. Soon they reached Issei's old house and went up to the door. Issei hesitated, but his hand was gripped by Wales and Eldridge put a hand on his head. He smiled at them before letting go of Wales' hand and knocked. "Yes?" a woman said as she opened the door. She looked to see who it was, and the first thing she noticed was the blonde-haired little girl. She looked to see the man. When she got a good look at his face, she brought a hand up to her mouth and gasped. It was Issei. It was her son. He came home. Issei put the little girl in his arms down and came up to face his mother. The moment he was at full height, his mother launched herself into him, crying into his jacket. "You came home," she sobbed. "You know it's me?" "How?" he asked. "Your old club told us about the supernatural and that you were older than you should be. We wanted to go to you, but we decided to wait until today. Me and your father wanted it to just be the three of us," she told him. "It was pain, waiting for today to come. Knowing you were back but not being able to see you. Then again, it was pretty late when we were told. You were probably asleep by then," she continued. She then let them in. The four walked over to the living room where Issei's dad was watching TV. When he heard more than one set of footsteps, he looked in the direction of the door and jumped out of his seat when he caught sight of Issei. "Issei!" he shouted and ran to his son. The two hugged. The three females watched before Issei's mother went up for a family hug. Wales and Eldridge smiled at the family reunion. When the family finally let go after a few minutes, the older hiatus turned to look at the two that Issei brought with him. "So, who do they represent?" his father asked. At Issei's confused look, he explained. "Your friends told us that you had girls that could turn into warships." "Ah. Well, this lovely lady here represents the battleship HMS Prince of Wales of the British Royal Navy," he said, pointing to Wales. She gave a bow and a smile in greeting. "Hello." Issei then pointed to Eldridge. "And this is Eldridge. She represents the destroyer USS Eldridge of the United States Navy." Eldridge walked up to Issei's mother and looked at her for a second before she lifted her arms up. His mother was surprised but picked the little destroyer up and held her. "Well, isn't she cute?" his mother smiled. "Yeah, the destroyers tend to be cute," Issei said. His mother looked at him with a questioning look. "Let's sit down first," he told them. He moved to a couch, where he sat down, and Wales joined him. His parents sat down on a couch across from them. His mother moved Eldridge onto her lap and started to play with her. "So, what did you mean when you said that the destroyers tend to be cute?" she asked. "They normally take the form of children, Mrs. Hayadu," Wales said. His parents were a little surprised at that but didn't say more. Instead, they decided to ask him other questions. "When did you start wearing glasses?" his father asked, as he pointed to Issei's glasses. Issei pushed his glasses up before answering. "Close to the end of basic. I started noticing that things close to me were getting blurry. So I went to get them checked and it turned out that I'm farsighted. So they gave me glasses and I managed to graduate. There's more but I'll tell y'all later," he said. He looked to his dad with a playful grin. "I blame you," he said. The family of three all laughed. They spent hours talking. They asked about military life, how he became a commander, how he came to command the girls, what the base was like, all sorts of questions. During the talk, Eldridge and Wales fell asleep. Eldridge decided to curl up in Mickey Hayata's lap and Wales fell asleep leaning on Issei's shoulder. When the talk came to an end, the three Hayatas looked at the two blondes. "Hey, how about I take the two of you on a tour of my base? You can meet the others. You'll love them. You might love the maids more, Mom," he told them. They both perked up. "You have maids?" his mother asked with some type of gleam in her eyes. "Yes? They all belong to the Royal Navy faction, just so you know. Expect an English accent of some sort from them," he said. "Oh, The only ones you need to watch out for in the Royal Navy are Queen Elizabeth and Ark Royal," he said. His parents both raised an eyebrow. He nodded. "Yep. Ark is a Lilicon, and Queen Elizabeth will act the part of a queen. So she'll try to order you around." Both of their eyebrows rose that time. "Yeah. They're a handful. I could tell you all about the time that Elizabeth Trietto." Issei trailed off as his eyes widened behind his glasses. "I could show you," he whispered. His parents leaned forward to hear him. "I could just show you. Akashi could make something that could show what goes on in my base. I know she can. She's done a bunch of other stuff that would normally be seen as impossible." He jumped up, waking up Wales in the process. "Issei." Wales glared. "Hey. Sorry," he chucked sheepishly. His parents looked between the two of them. Are the two of you together? His mother asked. Yes. I am one of his many wives, Wales said proudly. His parents stared in shock. One? Of many? How many did he have? His father was the first to speak. I guess you finally achieved your dream of being a harem king, Issei. Issei only rubbed the back of his neck. It wasn't about that initially. Originally, me and my wives were friends and we agreed that the oaths were just for a power boost. But somewhere along the line, we just ended up marrying for real. I still don't know how they agreed, he said. Don't worry about it. Wales smiled. The others looked at her but didn't say anything. Anyway, where are we gonna go back? It's late and I need to talk to Akashi. He got up from the couch. See y'all later. He waved as he and Wales, who was carrying Eldridge, left. Time skip. It took a few days, but Akashi managed to build the machine. The machine looked like a chair with wires and a helmet coming out of it. During the building process, Surzex and Sona came up to him to talk. Surzex said he told the other Satans about him returning, so he should expect them to come talk to him about how he disappeared. Sona was curious about how life on his base was. Apparently, his parents told the ORC, who told the student council, who ended up accidentally telling the wrong people about it, and now the whole school was interested. That meant that he now had to show everyone what was going on almost daily in his base. Oh well. He did think about giving Kuoh Academy a tour of his base just like he would his parents. This way they can get an informal tour and see how crazy his life had become. Now he was sitting in the chair, facing all of Kuoh Academy, his parents, the Satans, and his secretaries. Well, Akashi, let's do this, he said as he relaxed in the surprisingly comfortable chair. She nodded and flipped the switch on a console close by. Issei suddenly felt tired. He closed his eyes and relaxed completely. The giant pulled-down screen flashed white before a room took its place. I'm gonna try this format out. Let me know if I should keep it or change it to how other people usually do reaction fix. The shipgirls smiled when they saw the memory. It was a funny one. Issei has to spend a whole lot of money that day. The other watchers looked on in confusion. Some were amused though. K-Tace noticed something. That white-haired one kind of looks like you, Ms. Bismarck, Ms. Enterprise. She is Tirpitz, my sister? Bismarck said. I'm always told that the three of us look alike. Enterprise groaned. Bismarck patted her back. She then looked at the assembled group of watchers. I think we should introduce the ones we are watching here, she said. She then pointed to the three on the screen. You already know Tirpitz. The one in the middle is Deutschland, and the other one is Z. When it showed a white-haired girl sitting with three others, whose hats are the only thing that could be seen, Bismarck spoke. That is Deutschland's little sister, Graf Spee, and those other three are some of Ironblood's Z-type destroyers. Then it showed two more girls, one of which they recognized. You already know Prinz Eugen. The blonde is her older sister, Admiral Hipper. Then it showed a close-up of a face, and that is Graf Zeppelin. The others took this time to file away those names while watching. Many of the people watching who were older siblings sympathized with Admiral Hipper. Some of their younger siblings did something similar. Sona and Rias sympathized with Hipper because, for them, it was their older siblings that did this kind of stuff. Poor Admiral Hipper. A third-year girl said. Yeah. I have a younger brother that teases me a lot. A second-year boy said. Me too, but I have a sister. A first-year boy chimed in. Sona and Rias didn't say anything, they just looked at their siblings, who looked away from them and whistled innocently. Some of the girls, like Kaneko, also felt sympathy for the blonde. They were also lacking in the department. No one had anything to comment here, but some did chuckle or giggle at the way Deutschland acted. Some of the watchers' sweat dropped. I don't think that counts as respect, Sona said. I will admit she is cute. A boy said. Who? His friend asked. Which one? Another asked. They're all cute, was his reply. They suddenly felt killing intent behind them. They slowly turned and saw Issei's secretaries behind them. I do hope you didn't mean cute in that way, right? Bismarck said. They nodded so fast they might have gotten whiplash from it. Scary, everyone said. They turned back and watched, not wanting to get on the battleship's bad side right now. Wow, Deutschland's like our older siblings. Ria's sweat dropped. Sona nodded. Hey, we're not that bad, said siblings protested. Sona and Rias didn't say anything, causing the two Satans to sit in a corner, depressed. Everyone wisely ignored that. She must be pretty good to get MVP a lot, Murayama said. Yeah. K-Tace agreed. Of course she is. She's one of Iron Blood's best ships after all. Bismarck praised. When Deutschland said that behavior was gross, some sweat dropped and stared at the screen. I don't think that's how a big sister is supposed to behave. A second-year boy said. I agree. A girl chimed in. Others nodded in agreement. Heh. Those two are amusing right now. Saji said. Others nodded. That is true what Tirpitz said. That mutual admiration is important. It means that they both really love and respect each other. A girl said. I bet Prince Eugen really does love her older sister. A cheerful girl said. Yes, Tirpitz is right. They should talk more. Her friend said. I hate everything? Ika asked. Don't worry about it. That's just how Zeppelin is. Belfast said. Why would Z reject her lunch? Was it bad or something? Asia asked. The secretaries only pointed to the screen. She wouldn't really destroy the world, would she? A first-year girl asked. I hope not. Zenobia replied. Don't worry. That's just Graf Zeppelin being Graf Zeppelin. Nagato reassured. Some of the watchers sighed with relief and turned back to the screen. She just waltzed right in there? Murayama shouted. No S given. A boy said. Some others agreed with him. Some of the more perverted boys were only paying attention to Zeppelin's bust. Holy hell, look at the size of those things. Matsuda said. Motohama started to calculate her sizes. They were suddenly bonked in the head by Enterprise. No, was all she said as she glared at all the perverted boys in front of her. They nodded, afraid. She's scary too. Everyone said. Ah. That's cute. Miki Hayata smiled. Some of the other women and girls nodded in agreement. I wonder what it tastes like. A first-year girl said. Me too. A boy next to her agreed. I'm sure she'll beat her with enough practice. A member of the kendo team said. The rest of the team agreed. Lucky. Many of the males, and some of the females, thought. They started sweating when the rest of the females stared at them, as though they knew the males' thoughts. Is she a Chuyuni? Rias asked. Yes? Bismarck said, unsure. That explains it. A teacher said. Is everyone in Iron Blood really accustomed to solitude? Asia asked. Yes. It's just the way we are. We don't really socialize with anyone not of our faction. Bismarck nodded. That is true. It took us quite a while to get Bismarck here to socialize with Hood. Queen Elizabeth said. Bismarck only looked away with a blush. Rias, Mickey, and Queen Elizabeth fumed when they heard Deutschland call Issei a servant. For Rias and Elizabeth, because to them, Issei was their servant. For Mickey, because this girl had the gall to call her son a servant. How dare she? My boy isn't a servant, Mickey shouted. She then rounded on Rias. And don't think I've forgotten what you've done. If I had a say in it, my son wouldn't be your servant anymore. She took deep breaths and calmed down. But Issei is a grown man now. I don't have any say in what he can do anymore. Rias and Queen Elizabeth shook with fright at the angry mother. So Issei brightened up your lives, huh? Gora Hayadu tried to change the subject. This worked because Mickey looked at Bismarck. Not just Ironbloods, but every other faction in Aza Lane too. She smiled. Everyone thought about that. Some didn't want to believe it because they still thought of Issei as a pervert. Even after everything they had seen. The supernatural, however, believes it. Everyone turned back to the screen. What? Everyone, but his parents, shouted. He's married too. I didn't see that coming. Damn you, Hayada. Why him? These were some of the things everyone said. They looked towards the shipgirls for answers. He married your sister? How are you okay with that? Isn't he a pervert? How? Bismarck held up a hand to try to calm everyone down. When they still kept asking questions, she decided to force them to be silent. She summoned her rigging and fired a blank. It was deafening, but it managed to quiet everyone down. Now, to answer your questions, yes, he is married to Tirpitz. He's not a pervert unless it's in the bedroom. And Tirpitz isn't the only one married to him. She said. In unison, Belfast, Bismarck, Enterprise, Queen Elizabeth, and Nagato all showed everyone their hands, or more specifically, their ring fingers. Everyone saw a silver ring on each of the girls' fingers. Everyone was silent once more. He had a harem? He had finally done it? While everyone was currently blue screening, Issei woke up and took the helmet off his head. What did they see? He asked. The time you bought everyone in Ironblood a ring, Naya. Akashi answered. Issei stood there before he was suddenly in a corner, holding his wallet to his chest. Don't worry, we won't have to do it again, I hope. He told his wallet. Scared wallet cooing noises. He just rubbed the wallet and stared off into space. The shipgirl's sweat dropped. When the ORC, the student council, and the hiatus walked into the gym/Issei's office, they came across something. Cough cough, fluffy. They saw Issei with his head in between some fluffy brown foxtails. Said tails were connected to a beautiful brown-haired fox girl wearing a kimono with a red jacket. Said tails were connected to a beautiful brown-haired fox girl wearing a kimono with a red jacket. Everyone just stared at the two before Sona cleared her throat, catching their attention. Oh. Sorry, Issei said, as he let go of the tails. This left the fox girl visibly saddened. Issei got up from his chair and walked towards the devils and his parents, the fox girl following from behind. I guess y'all are here for the tour, right? He asked. They all nodded. Who is this Issei? His mother asked, pointing to the woman. This is the battleship Ij and Amagi, he introduced. The fox girl bowed her head in greeting. The others returned it. Issei then started to walk to the doors of his office and motioned for the others to follow him. Amagi was immediately behind him and the others were close behind. He opened the doors and led everyone down a hallway towards some stairs, which they walked down to a big open room with sofas and some TVs. They continued toward a set of doors at the door of the room. Issei opened the doors and everyone went out into the blinding sunlight. When everyone's eyes adjusted, they saw multiple shipgirls interacting with each other, and in the distance, they could see warships of different types and sizes next to each other. Devils, my dear parents, welcome to the port. *Q Jurassic Park theme *. Everyone just looked at the girls and ships. They had never seen a place like this before. It was beautiful. Akino turned to Issei. Where are we? She asked. The Pacific Ocean. That's all I can say, the rest is classified. Only me, High Command, and the Kansen know the location. He told them. But what about supplies? Sona asked. Issei turned to her. The girls go and get them. Kansen? Saji asked. Issei motioned to Amagi. Amagi, and the other girls you've seen, are all Kansen, or shipgirls. He explained. The others made sounds of understanding. How did they come about? Asia asked. Issei opened his mouth, but before he could say a word, someone interrupted him. Commander Hayato, sir. A man wearing green armor and clothing came up to the group. What is Marine? Issei turned to the man, who started to whisper in his ear. Issei didn't say anything. When the man stopped talking to him, Issei nodded. Understood. He turned to the group. Sorry to make this quick, but I'm needed elsewhere. He then turned to Amagi. I trust you'll be able to give them a tour by yourself? She nodded. Okay, Issei said and followed the Marine away from the group. As they were watching him, Amagi spoke. Follow me, please. Cough. Are you okay? Asia asked. I'm fine. It's just how I am, don't worry about me. Amagi motioned for them to follow her. First up, let's take you to the Eagle Union section of the base. They walked for about minutes, making small talk along the way, before they made it to the Eagle dorms. Play this for the chapter until I tell you to stop. When they arrived, they saw Enterprise walking toward them. She waved once she was close enough. Hello? Welcome to Eagle Union. Come on, I'll help with the tour. They walked up to a large building, most likely the dorms. Sorry, but everyone is away on a sortie or commission. The only ones here are me, Eldridge, Cleveland, and Helena. Enterprise explained the lack of Kansen there. I'm sure the others would still have most of their girls with them, but you won't be interacting with them all today. She continued. When they entered, they saw a lot of American iconography. There were motivational posters, a few pictures of food, lewd pictures of men and women, all in all, pretty American. This is where we Eagle ships stay, obviously. I won't show you around because this is just where we sleep, but this room here is our rec room, where we hang out with one another. Enterprise said as she opened a door to her right. Inside the room were a bunch of couches and tables. On one wall there was a big screen that had multiple gaming consoles underneath it, a projector on the ceiling pointing to the screen, and multiple arcade games scattered around. Everyone looked around and started to mess with some of the stuff. This is cool, Kiba said. Yeah, I could probably stay here all day. Saji agreed. What do you do in here? Other than play games? Miki Hayato asked. Well, we also watch movies. We turn that on and pick from a library of movies on a computer. Enterprise said, as she pointed to said projector and computer. We are a crazy bunch. We party a lot too. Not as much as Iron Blood, but we still party a lot. She smiled. Amagi nodded along before coughing softly. Oh, Enterprise, so this is where you were, a tomboyish voice said. They turned toward the door, and saw a blonde-haired girl and a blue-haired girl standing there. Ah! Perfect timing. Everyone, this is USS Cleveland, Enterprise said, pointing to the blonde. And this is USS Helena. She pointed to the blue-haired girl. They both waved with a smile. So, giving them the tour? Cleveland smiled. Enterprise nodded. Everyone looked to Enterprise. Well, that's all really. I have nothing else to show you here, and you passed all the interesting stuff on your way here. So I guess I'll see y'all later? I probably will. Enterprise smiled and waved goodbye. Everyone smiled and waved back before following Amagi out. They were talking about how they had liked the games that they had got to play. It was fun, even though they didn't really see anything interesting there. They followed Amagi toward the Royal Navy dorms. When they arrived, they saw Warspite waiting for them. Greetings, I'm Warspite. We didn't really have much time when I brought Akashi in, but it's a pleasure meeting you. Now, if you would follow me, we can head towards the garden where Her Majesty has a little tea party for you. They followed the small girl and entered the garden, where there were a bunch of Kansan talking, eating snacks and drinking tea. When Queen Elizabeth saw them, she stood up. Greetings, honored guests. Allow me to welcome you to the finest navy on this base. Now come here and sit down. It's a tea party and everyone should be eating snacks and drinking tea. The other Royal Navy girls welcomed them with open arms. When they arrived at Queen Elizabeth's table, they saw a white-haired woman with large S wearing a white dress with a white hat. When they arrived at Queen Elizabeth's table, they saw a white-haired woman with large S wearing a white dress with a white hat. A little girl that kind of looked like her, just with a different dress and smaller hat, sitting on her lap, and a large-haired woman with a black dress. Once they had all sat down, Q introduced them. This is Illustrious. She pointed to the white-haired woman. This is Little Illustrious. She pointed to the little girl. And this is the little sister of Illustrious, Formidable. She finished by pointing to the woman with the black dress. The women smiled while the little girl waved. Everyone returned the greeting and introduced themselves. Time skip. After talking and having fun at the tea party, the Kuoh residents left the Royal Navy dorms with smiles and high spirits. That was fun. I even got some new recipes to try out when we get back. Akino said. Tasty. Kaneko said as she finished another sweet that she had taken. The other commented something similar. While their tea is quite good, I personally prefer tea from the Sakura Empire. Cough cough, Amagi said. Next is Iron Blood. The moment they were there, they noticed that the Iron Blood dorms looked more militaristic compared to the Eagle Union's plain dorms and the Royal Navy's decorative dorms. Waiting in front of the dorms were Bismarck, Prince Eugen, and another woman. She was a tall one, with long black hair with what looked like horns coming out of her head. She was wearing an extremely short black uniform. Welcome to Iron Blood. You already know me and Eugen, but you don't know this woman, Bismarck said, pointing to the unknown woman. The woman interrupted Bismarck. Greetings, I am Friedrich de Gross, H of the H-class battleships. She bowed her head. Scary, was everyone's thought. Yufufufu. I know what you are thinking, the woman said. Everyone kept their distance from her. Yufufufu. Shivers. Come along then, Bismarck said after a few seconds of silence. It was a very short tour. All they saw was Bismarck's office, their brewery, and their pools of beer. The reason it was short was because they wanted to get away from the H-class battleship. There was something about her that rubbed the devils the wrong way. As they were walking away, Bismarck turned to Friedrich. You scared them away, Yufufufu. So that's her commandant's mother. She wasn't even paying attention to Bismarck. She was currently looking at Miki Hayato. The two other Iron Blood girls just sighed. Sorry about her, she's usually like that. You'll get used to it eventually, Amagi said. They finally arrived to the Sakura Empire's section of the base. It was beautiful. There were sakura trees everywhere, and a very big one in the center. They walked past a bunch of kansen that had animal parts, and even ones that had horns. They even saw Matsuki and Kasuragi run past them with a bunch of other little girls dressed kind of like them. The girls waved as they passed the group, shouting hellos and goodbyes. They soon arrived to a Japanese-style palace, where Nagato stood with three other fox girls. One had white hair and blue eyes, the second one had gray hair and droopy ears, and the final one had brown hair and red eyes. The moment that the brown-haired fox girl saw them, she ran up to them and started to smell them. Why do you smell like Shikikan-sama? She asked the ORC. We're his friends, Kiba said, leaning away from her when she came up to him. She narrowed her eyes. She then smelled the hiatus. Why do the two of you smell strongly of him? We're his parents, Mickey said, and with that, the fox girl immediately bowed in apology. Forgive me. Everyone was just stunned at what happened. It's not every day that a fox girl comes up to sniff you. Anyway, let me introduce you to these girls. She pointed to the brown fox. This is Akaji, Kaga, the white fox, and Tosa, the gray fox. All bowed in greeting. Nagato started to walk to the palace and motioned for the others to follow. Come, let us get started. You can stop the music here, if you've played it this far. I'm gonna be honest, I had no idea what I was gonna do for the tour, so sorry it's rushed. If y'all have any ideas, feel free to let me know and I'll use them for the next time they are on the base. With Issei. Issei was walking down a metal hallway that led into a large room with a large screen at the end, facing the hallway. In the center of the room was a large holographic table that was currently projecting an image of the Earth. Circling it and facing the large screen was a bunch of computers that held men and women in dark green uniforms. Circling it and facing the large screen was a bunch of computers that held men and women in dark green uniforms. I couldn't choose between the two, but you can guess what I was going for here, right? On the screen was a man in the same uniform as Issei, but he held the rank of Admiral. Admiral Hackett, sir. Issei saluted. At ease, Commander. I'm calling to let you know that there is an anomaly close to your location. Anomaly, sir? Issei asked, confused. The Admiral nodded. Yes, Commander. We are sending another commander, and some of her Kansen to your base, and the two of you will figure out what it is. Reports say it's a portal, but to where? We don't know. That's why the two of you will find out. Issei thought about it for a bit. An anomaly? Here? The war with the Ravagers ended a year ago, and the war with the Sirens ended months ago. So why are we getting an anomaly now? It doesn't make sense. He thought. He looked up at the Admiral. I don't like it, sir. It doesn't make sense. The only two species we met able to create things like these have been defeated and left Earth, he said. The Admiral nodded. I know, but we need to find out what is going on, and the two of you will have to figure it out. Both of you are the closest to it, and it'll take time to get the other commanders there. Don't worry though, we're mobilizing the rest of the EDF in case whatever's on the is dangerous. I see. Understood, Admiral. We'll wait for the other commander before acting. Issei nodded. Glad to hear it, Commander Haidu. Here's the coordinates of the portal. Also, you're in charge of this mission and additional ground forces are awaiting pickup to your base. Good luck, Godspeed, and for the glory of Mother Terra. The Admiral finished. For the glory of Mother Terra. Issei and the rest of the personnel chanted while holding their right hands over their hearts. Like this, when the Admiral disconnected the call, Issei turned to the people in the room. I want everyone to be on alert. Use the coordinates that the Admiral gave us. I want eyes on that anomaly and I want it constantly monitored. Inform me when our guests get here. I need to send some of the girls to retrieve our additional forces. He ordered. Aye, sir. Issei was walking back to his room to prepare for their new guests. Before he was even halfway there, another of the base's Marines walked up to him. Commander Haidu, the new commander, and some of her ships are here, she said. Looks like I won't have time to put my makeup on. He joked internally. Issei nodded and followed her to the docks. Good thing he was already close to them. On his way there, he saw his girls and base personnel moving around like bees. How come I'm just now hearing about this? He asked. She called ahead while you were talking with the Admiral and said she'd be here soon. Apparently, they told her a few days ago, and she set out to get here early. The Marine replied. How many Kansen did she bring? Issei asked her. 13 ships, sir. 2 full fleets and 1 extra then. He muttered. The Marine looked at him, but he waved her off and the two continued on to the docks. How did they get here? He asked. Aircraft carrier, sir. I don't know who, but she was definitely Eagle Union. Issei nodded. They continued the rest of the walk in silence. Soon they arrived to the docks, where Issei saw an aircraft carrier. He knew whose ship that was. He saw the girls coming down, and noticed that it was an Eagle Union fleet and a Royal Navy fleet. He mentally said their names as they walked off the carrier. Starting with the RN, Juno, Javelin, Amazon, Hood, Repulse, Victorious, now the EU, Cassin, Downs, Laffey, Washington, Long Island, and finally, the carrier herself, Ranger. When the 12 Kansen noticed the man who was obviously the commander, if the uniform was anything to go by, and went up to him. They let Hood greet him. She stepped up to him and held out her hand. Greetings. You are the commander of this base, yes? Issei nodded and grabbed her hand to give her a handshake and answer her. Yes, I'm Commander Issei Hayada. How've you been, old buddy? A female voice interrupted. Issei knew that voice. He turned around to return her greeting. Laura Thompson, same uniform as Issei. After finishing his handshake with Hood, he turned and walked up to her. They shared a high five and a smile. He also noticed a man in red armor behind her. Issei also noticed that he had H in white on the upper left side of his chest. He also knew who this was. H-. Glad to see you again. How've you been? Issei said as the two shook hands. Good. It's a pain putting up with her, but I'll live. He joked. Hey, the two men chuckled. It's good to see you too. It feels like years since the raid on the Siren base. Issei said and motioned for all of them to follow. Let's continue this in my office over some coffee, or tea, if that's what you prefer. Also, there's something I have to tell you. Issei said, You're from another world. Commander Laura Thompson said. Issei stumbled a bit but regained his footing and turned to her. How? The Admiral told me. She stared as if it was obvious. Issei thought about it for a second before he facepalmed. Right. Of course. They continued on to Issei's office, making small talk and catching up. They took about 10 minutes to get to Issei's office. He opened the door and continued talking. Why wasn't I invited? He asked. She just gave me the oath ring yesterday. H shouted, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. Issei, H-, and Laura all stared at the students in his office/the gym. The students stared at Issei and the two unknown people next to him. They just stared at each other for literally 10 minutes before Issei spoke slowly. Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot that Akashi did this. The two groups continued to stare at one another for a few more minutes before Aika spoke. So who's this? She asked. That snapped everyone out of it, and Issei cleared his throat. Right. Sorry. This is my fellow commander, Laura Thompson, and this is her secretary's ship, H-. They are here to help me with something. The students nodded before they continued on their way out of the gym before Murayama shouted something that caught the attention of the other students. Wait. An oath ring is that ring you gave to those Iron Blood girls and your secretaries, right? Yes. The ring can be seen as one of two things. It can only be seen as a power boost to the girls, or it can be seen as a marriage proposal between a commander and their Kansen. There are more, but those are the main two. Issei explained. What about you? Which one was it? Aika asked. It was a marriage proposal. Issei smiled. The students nodded before they all left the gym. Issei sat down at his desk and motioned for the other two to sit, which they did. H then retracted his helmet. The scares and eye patch are on the left side. Belfast came in and served everyone their preferred refreshments. Coffee for Issei and H-, and tea for Laura. She also came in with some sandwiches for them. Let's eat before we begin, Issei said. The other two nodded and picked up a sandwich each and bit into it. So, mind explaining this? Laura asked, motioning around the room. Akashi, was all Issei said. Ah. That makes sense. This does seem like something that would happen if she messed around with one of her machines. Laura nodded. Was she punished? H asked. Issei nodded. She wasn't allowed to work in her store. Harsh. She must have begged for a lighter sentence. H grinned. She did. She's back now, but I think she'll start thinking things through before messing around again. Issei grinned. That poor cat. Laura said. She didn't sound sympathetic at all. It took a total of 20 minutes for them to finish all the sandwiches and their drinks. They sat there for a few more minutes and let the food go down. Issei then leaned forward. All right. Let's get down to business. Let's get down to business, Issei said. Laura and H nodded and the three started to share information. That was about 2 hours ago and the three friends had separated to go and get ready. He had changed out of his officer's uniform and into a combat uniform. It was a dark green uniform with black gloves, boots, belt, drop leg holster, and vest. On the shoulders was the emblem of the Earth Defense Force. The pick at the top. He was walking down the same hallway to the CIC, Combat Information Center, and found Laura, wearing the same thing he was, and H walking down the same hallway. They nodded to each other before walking up to the automated door and entering the room. When one of the crewmen saw them, he announced their entrance. Officers on deck? Everyone stopped what they were doing and stood up with a salute. At ease. What's the status of the anomaly? Issei asked. A crewman turned back to his terminal. It's still there, sir. We can enter whenever we're ready. Issei nodded. All right. Laura, I want you get your fleet ready. I'll need to go and pick the girls who will be going, and since you have Eagle Union and Royal Navy, I'll need to pick from Iron Blood and Sakura Empire. Roger. Laura saluted and walked out with H behind her. Issei turned back to the crewmen in the room. I want everyone here monitoring that anomaly / We can't afford for anything to go wrong, not at this stage. He ordered. Aye, sir. They responded. Issei nodded and walked out, thinking on who to bring with him. I could leave the air power to Laura and just focus on firepower. But what if we need more aircrafts? Tough choices. Maybe 1 or 2 additional aircraft carriers will be enough, he thought. As he was walking to the Iron Blood dorms, he started to go through every ship Iron Blood had. After a few minutes, he made his choices for Iron Blood. Yes, they'll do just nicely. Iron Blood can focus on firepower and not aviation. I'll leave that to the Sakura Empire, he thought, and entered the Iron Blood dorms. The first person he saw was Z. Her commandant. What can I do for you today? She asked. Can you call Bismarck, Tirpitz, Friedrich, Hipper, and Prinz here, please? He smiled. She nodded and ran off to find them. It didn't take Z very long to find them. They were all in the dorm kitchen eating cereal and asked. After explaining why she was looking for them, the 6 went back to the entrance room and saw Issei sitting on one of the couches there. I brought them, she announced. Good. All right, girls, the reason I called you 6 was because you're going with me through the anomaly. You're the strongest Iron Blood girls I have, and I believe we might need the firepower, Issei told them. They were not that surprised at being chosen. They were surprised when Issei told them he would be going through the anomaly too, though. But isn't that dangerous? Z asked worriedly. Nah. As long as you girls are there, I'll have nothing to worry about. Issei smiled and shook his head. The 6 Iron Blood girls blushed but felt happy at his praise, not that Hipper would admit it. They won't let anything hurt him. When do we leave? Bismarck asked. In a few hours. I still have to pick 6 Sakura girls and then we can begin the operation, he told them. The Iron Blood girls nodded and left for their rooms. They would need to get ready too. They had to look good for Issei, as well as gather supplies that they might need. Issei walked out of the Iron Blood dorms and started to walk toward the Sakura Empire dorms, waving and smiling at some of the Kansen he saw. He also saluted some of the base personnel. It didn't take him long to reach the Sakura dorms, about 20 minutes, and entered. This time, though, he didn't see anyone right away. He walked further in and heard what sounded like someone practicing with a sword. Unfortunately, that did little to narrow down who it could be, because quite a few girls used the katana in the Sakura Empire. He followed the sound out to a courtyard and saw 2 girls practicing with their blades. It was Takao and Zuikaku. They were currently facing one another in a duel, and from the sweat on their faces, they had been going at it for a while. Takao. Zuikaku. Finally, I found someone, Issei suddenly said, startling the 2 Kansen. They jumped and turned toward Issei with scowls, or a pout in Zuikaku's case, and yelled at him. Shikikan-sama, how many times have we told you, never do that? Sorry, but I need the 2 of you to head to the entrance. I still need to find 4 more girls, he told them. HM? Why? Zuikaku asked. You 2, as well as the other 4 I need to find, will be a part of my fleet that'll go through the anomaly, he told her. We understand. We'll be waiting for you there, Shikikan-sama, Takao said. Don't keep us waiting, ya hear? Zuikaku pointed at him. Of course, and it's Issei, Tako-chan. He smiled. Takao stumbled out the door at that. Don't call me Tako-chan. Zuikaku and Issei laughed. The 2 followed the red-faced Takao out, and went in separate directions, the 2 Kansen toward the entrance, and Issei further into the Sakura dorms. As he was walking, he heard a voice speak. I did it, yes. He went to where he heard it, and saw that it led to a room. He opened the door and looked in. He saw a destroyer playing video games. It was Ayanami. She turned around when she heard the door open and saw that it was her commander. She paused her game and stood up. She walked over to him and looked up at him. Issei knew what she was asking even before she opened her mouth. I'm here to get a fleet ready to head through the anomaly. I need you to head to the entrance of the dorms. Takao and Zuikaku are already there, he told her. She nodded and turned off her console and went to the door to head out. Before she could, though, it opened and in walked Fubuki. Fubuki stopped when she noticed Issei in the room before running up to him with a smile on her face. Shiki-kun-sama. What are you doing here? Oh. Are you here to play? Or maybe we did something wrong? She started to blather. It wasn't until Issei put a hand on her head did she quiet down and enjoy the feeling of Issei's hand rubbing her head and ears. Don't worry. I'm just here to get a fleet. Speaking of which, since you're here, go with Ayanami to the entrance and meet with Takao and Zuikaku. I'll be there after I get 2 more girls. I'll explain when I get there. He told her. She nodded and followed Ayanami out and toward the dorm entrance. Issei went even further in and smelled smoke coming from one of the rooms. He ran to the room and slammed open the door. Inside the room were 2 aircraft carriers. There was Kaga over a stove, burning water. Like what the? How? And standing a bit away from her was Shukaku taking a picture of it. Kaga was probably drunk again and tried to boil some water, but instead, she's burning it. This is probably Akaji's fault. Or Prince. It's one of the 2, and no one can tell me otherwise. Issei thought with a sweat drop. What's going on here? He asked. Grown Kaga said. Bad senpai. Was all Shukaku said. Akaji then? Both of them nodded. Alright then. Kaga, sober up and head down to the entrance. I'll be there shortly. Shukaku, do whatever I guess. He said. What's going on? The White Crane asked. We're about to go through the anomaly. I'm gathering a fleet, and I just need 1 more ship from the Sakura Empire, and then I'm done. Can I come? She asked. Sorry, but I need a battleship, and I already have Zuikaku going. Issei said apologetically. No fair. You're taking my cute little sister but not me? Bad Shikikan. Shukaku pouted. Don't worry, you'll be going in with the next wave. If we need a next wave. If not, then I'll come get you anyway. Issei tried to calm her down. She thought about it for a bit before nodding and sulked off, most likely to her room. Kaga has long since left, and just left the burnt water there. God damn it, Kaga! He shouted. Anyway, he left and went further into the dorms and came across an other room where he smelled smoke. Unlike with Kaga, this smoke was actually an incense. Issei went in and saw that it was the Sakura Empire's personal spa. Maybe I should get to approving of their request to build one for the other girls. Issei thought as he looked around. Welcome! 3 voices said. Oh, it's Shiki-kun-sama. One of them said. It was the Yamato class. Hello, girls. I'm glad I found you. He smiled. HM? Whatever do you mean, Shiki-kun-sama? Yamato asked. I need you, Yamato, to head down to the entrance room. We're going through the anomaly and I need 1 more battleship. You're the final girl I needed. He said. Yamato nodded. I understand. She turned to her sisters. Please look after the spa while I'm gone. Of course, sister. The other 2 nodded. Issei and Yamato went back to the entrance where Issei told the 6 girls that they needed to get ready because they had to leave in a few hours. The girls nodded and left to get ready. Time skip. Issei, Laura, H, and their respective fleets were ready. Behind them were more ships carrying EDF troops and equipment. Next to Issei was Nagato, who pouted and gave Issei the puppy dog eyes until he agreed to let her come. Her argument was that H was going and he was Laura's secretary, and that meant that Issei could take one of his with him. Nagato just happened to be the fastest to get to him, much to the chagrin of Queen Elizabeth, Belfast, and Enterprise. Alright. We don't know what's up ahead, but that's not going to stop us. We have an important job here. This could very well be a better first contact with other life. We all know how that went with the Ravagers, but let's not be like them and hope to God that anything on the other side isn't either. Issei addressed everyone. Alright. All fleets, full speed ahead. Issei said, thrusting out an arm. All fleets, full speed ahead. Issei shouted. There was a total of ships going through the anomaly. The fleets of the 2 commanders and an extra 6 carriers that were carrying EDF forces and equipment. The anomaly was bigger up close, but they didn't back down and charged forward. It was a strange sensation. It felt like they had went through water, but the anomaly seemed as if it was made of gelatin. It pushed out on the other side when they went through. Think of Stargate. Once they were through, they saw that everything looked the same, but it was raining and there was a light mist. Where are we? An EDF trooper asked. I'm changing the appearance of the EDF forces from how they looked in the games. I don't know, but let's continue on. Hopefully we'll find someone friendly. Issei said. They had been sailing for 2 hours now and still haven't found anything. Maybe they were far away from any land. Some of the troops were getting bored and antsy with nothing going on. Hey, how about we sing some songs? An older EDF trooper asked. Good idea! But what do we sing? Laura asked. Everyone thought about it before a trooper replied. I've got it! Everyone looked at him, and he started to sing, and everyone else smiled and joined in. The Kansen were surprised at the lyrics. It gave a hopeful feel to them. Man, how long has it been since anyone had sung that? Issei asked. Well over 10 years, I'd say. A female trooper said. Man, has it really been 10 years since the Ravagers invaded? Laura asked. Yeah. I can't believe it's already been 10 years since then. We've really done a lot since it ended. Another trooper said, and it was true. In the years since the invasion, humanity had rebuilt everything that could be rebuilt and started to repopulate. Fortunately, many military forces around the world survived along with the remaining civilians. Only the Earth Defense Force had been in danger. They only had enough forces to fit in one aircraft carrier. Thanks to the EDF's elite storm team, they pushed the aliens back and saved planet Earth. Unfortunately, the sirens came. Fortunately, they rarely attacked human settlements. Let's stop thinking about the past and start another song. How about the newer version we sang during the invasion of? Issei started. They all smiled and started to sing all verses. This version also surprised the Kansen. It quickly turned into shock and horror about 2 verses in. Just how bad was it, Shikikan-sama? Fubuki hesitantly started. How bad was it? Issei didn't say anything for a bit before he put a hand on Fubuki's head. It was bad. Millions lost their lives, and I'm not gonna lie, we started to give up. Survivors had to resort to guerrilla tactics just to survive, and the EDF was all but wiped out. HQ had the remaining troops do a suicide charge against the brain. We lost a lot of good people, but their deaths weren't in vain. We beat the Ravagers and saved the world, but things weren't the same, unlike after the first invasion. But humanity will find a way. We always have. Laura said. The humans nodded and started to cheer. Yeah, we showed them. We'll show anyone who wants to with the human race the what for. The Kansen were surprised. Never had they seen humans acting like this. It was kind of inspiring. After all, here was a race that had almost been pushed to extinction, but against all odds, they had won. They continued to fight to the last man and made sure the aliens remembered the human race. Without a shadow of a doubt, they'd show the sirens the power of the human spirit. It was kind of humbling, if you think about it. Before they had summoned the Kansen, humanity was doing a pretty damn good job at fighting the sirens. It became easier after they had been summoned. Do you think you can tell us some stories sometime? Zuikaku asked. Sure. When I have the time. Issei nodded. I can't believe humanity was almost extinct. Scary. Long Island shivered. The other Kansen agreed. Oh. I just thought of another song we could sing. Laura shouted, startling everyone. Laura! Don't do that! H shouted. Sorry. Before you two can argue, what song did you have in mind? Issei asked. Laura grinned before singing. Of course. Issei and some of the others smiled before joining in. Time skip. After hours of singing, it was finally night time. Everyone had turned in for the night, and only a select few stayed up as lookouts. This marked their first official day in this strange new world. Issei was currently in his room with Takao, Bismarck, and Nagato. Issei was sitting on his bed with Nagato on his lap, letting him brush her hair. What do you think awaits us? She asked. I don't know, but if they try anything. Issei trailed off. If there is anything or anyone in this world, I hope they're friendly. Bismarck said. Indeed. If not, then I shall cut them down where they stand. Takao said seriously. Let's hope it doesn't come down to that. Issei said as he put the brush down. He patted Nagato's head, signaling for her to get off his lap, which she does begrudgingly. Takao sat next to Issei and let him start brushing her hair too. No matter what happens, I want everyone to be on their guard and look out for each other, alright? Issei told them. They nodded. Of course, Shikikan. We will. Nagato said. Good. Make sure to tell the others when you see them. I'll tell the rest of the troops tomorrow. Issei said. He set the brush down again and looked at his girls. Alright, so whose turn is it today? He asked. Mine. Bismarck said. Issei nodded and opened the door for Nagato and Takao. They gave Issei a hug good night and left. He turned and saw Bismarck already laying down on the bed, waiting for him. He walked up to the bed and watched as she moved over. He got under the covers after she moved and laid down. Once he was comfortable, he felt Bismarck lay her head on his chest. He wrapped an arm around her and pulled her closer. The two laid there and basked in each other's warmth. They both fell asleep holding one another and whispered an I love you in each other's ears. The next day, everyone was up and ready to continue their exploration. Unfortunately, it was a rainy and foggy day, and visibility was limited, but they weren't going to let that stop them. They continued to sail on and hoped to find anything. Multiple people were monitoring the radio waves to try and find anything, but they had been unsuccessful so far. It wasn't until the afternoon did they get a signal. It wasn't good and cut out a bit, but they got the general idea. Add reinforcements. Abyssal forces are then expected. Want much longer. It then cut off and static was the only thing left. Everyone looked towards Issei, who was in thought. What do we do, Shikikan-sama? Zuikaku asked. Do we know where the signal originated from? He asked the radio operator. Yes, sir. Here it is. She replied and showed him. Issei thought a bit more before answering Zuikaku. Zuikaku, I want you and Kaga to launch some recon planes so we can get an idea of what we're dealing with. Ranger, Long Island, Victorious, be ready just in case we need you to send some too, he ordered. The aircraft carriers saluted and went to go do as they were told. Everyone watched as Kaga and Zuikaku launched their scout planes and waited for any information. They didn't have to wait long for the information, because Kaga suddenly turned to Issei with a look of urgency. There are an unknown number of enemy vessels unlike any I've ever seen before, and 12 Kansen in bad shape. What are your orders? She asked. Bismarck, take the Iron Blood fleet and attack the unknown vessels. Kaga, Zuikaku, distract the enemy with your planes long enough for the Iron Blood to get there. He ordered. The girls nodded and do as they were ordered. At the same time, Laura was giving orders to her Eagle Union fleet. Washington, you follow them with your fleet. Ranger, Long Island, send planes to reinforce Kaga and Zuikaku. She ordered. Yes, ma'am. They saluted. No. Let the Iron Blood go by themselves. They need some action. They've been cooped up longer than you girls. Issei said. They looked like they were about to protest, but backed down begrudgingly. The Iron Blood girls equipped their riggings and sped off to assist the unknown Kansen. I hope you know what you're doing, Issei. H said. Don't worry. They're tougher than they look. They'll finish this quickly. Over in the battlefield, all members of the Konga class were damaged, but thankfully not much. Akaji and Kaga were the worst, with Fubuki, Tenryu, Yudachi, Atego, Takao, and Prince Yujin having barely any damage. They were outnumbered and surrounded though. What do we do? There's so many. Fubuki asked. We're almost out of ammo too. Yudachi panicked. Don't worry. I sent a distress call. Prince Yujin said cheerfully. It won't do us much good. They're jamming our signal. Tenryu told her. What? No way. Prince Yujin replied. Yeah, it looks like it only went a few miles, maybe. Not enough to reach the base, that's for sure. Tenryu said. This worried everyone. How were they going to get out of this one? They were low on ammo, tired, and damaged. If they didn't think of something now, they weren't going to make it. Fubuki looked around at everyone, trying to come up with something. This was bad. If they don't get out now, they'll be dead. She looked around and noticed that they were surrounded by 2 abyssal aircraft carriers, 4 battleships, 10 cruisers, and 20 destroyers. We could try to force ourselves through, but it's too dangerous. We could get hurt even more and maybe lose some people. And I don't want to lose any of you. You're my friends. Fubuki told them. Well, we'll have to think of something, and fast. Tenryu shouted. Tenryu noticed one of the battleships aiming for their group and was about to warn everyone, when some Nakajima Bien and Japanese Zeros flew by and dropped bombs into some of the abyssal ships, taking out an aircraft carrier, a battleship, 6 cruisers, and 2 destroyers, throwing the abyssal fleet into disarray. Wow! Nice work, Akaji, Kongo said. Far right. Yeah. You too, Kaga, Haruna said. Next to Kirishima. You timed it perfectly. Hai cheered. Far left. Thank goodness the both of you managed to recover enough strength to launch them, Kirishima said. The one with glasses. This confused the 2 aircraft carriers. That wasn't us, Akaji said. Left. She's right. I can barely lift my arms right now. Kaga grimaced. Right, now this confused the others. If not them, then who? Then who could have done it? Atego asked. Right, hopefully someone friendly was in the area and heard the SOS. Takao said. Left, they were so busy talking, they never noticed the abyssal destroyer until it was too late. It shocked everyone stiff. No one could move and only watched. It was too close to the only two destroyers for everyone to fire, for fear of hitting their allies. It jumped up and was about to attack Fubuki and Yadachi until it was shot and destroyed. My, that wasn't very nice. Attacking two defenseless destroyers like that. Looks like Mother needs to punish you. A deep female voice. Both sides looked towards the voice and all of them almost fainted in fear. In front of them was a Kanmusu, except her gear looked more in line with the abyssals. She was quite the frightening sight. Her gear was massive. And she was quite massive as well. Those dragon/shark things looked like they could eat a destroyer whole. It seems we made it just in time. A blonde-haired woman said, as she observed the sight before her. Indeed. Let's get rid of these enemies and go back to her commandant. A white-haired look-alike said. They too had those animalistic riggings, but smaller. The blonde-haired one looked important. My. What cute little destroyers. I could just eat you up. A voice behind Fubuki said. When she turned around to face the voice, she found a face close to hers. She jumped back a bit from the face behind her. There was a gray-haired girl and a blonde-haired one behind her. When she and the others noticed what the gray-haired girl was wearing, they blushed a bit, or a lot in the destroyer's case. Much like the other three, these two had the same types of riggings. Fubuki was so busy looking at the gray-haired one, she didn't notice someone come up behind her. Always keep your guard up. You may never know when the enemy is close by. Yeep! Fubuki shrieked. This surprised some of the others in her group, but not the newcomers. They looked at the new arrival and saw that she was a destroyer. She was glaring at Fubuki and Yadachi. She turned away and looked at the remaining abyssal ships. Let us dispose of these creatures and return to her commandant. I wish to give him a full report after this. The destroyer said. The gray-haired one took this moment to tease her. You just want him to head-pat you. She grinned. No. The destroyer returned with a red face. Humph. His head-pats don't even feel that good anyway. The blonde twin-tailed one said and looked away. Tsundere. Everyone thought. Did the chessboard say something? Huh? I'll kill you? Enough. Let's finish this and get these girls fixed up. The blonde one with the cap ordered. The other five nodded, and in a couple of minutes, they destroyed the abyssal fleet. It stunned the Kanmusu. It would take them quite a while to destroy a fleet of that size, yet these unknown Kanmusu destroyed them in under 5 minutes. Just how powerful were they? The blonde and black turned to them. Let's get you somewhere safe and dry, Ja? She said. They nodded just as a horn sounded and a giant ship came out of the fog, followed by 4 more. Wow! Big! Konga shouted. The other Kanmusu nodded before being brought on board. Once they were on the deck, they met a man wearing a dark green uniform with a black armored vest over it. Her commandant. Their saviors shouted and saluted the man. This caused the 12 Kanmusu to widen their eyes before they too saluted the man, or as best as they could in their injured state. At ease, everyone. The man smiled. I'm Commander Issei Hayato of Azur. This confused the Kanmusu. Azur? They have never heard of it before. Excuse me, Commander, but what is Azur? Fubuki asked with a hand raised. He looked at her and explained. Azur is a united naval force composed of 4 factions. Those factions are the Eagle Union, otherwise known as the United States, the Royal Navy, the United Kingdom, the Sakura Empire, also known as Japan, and Iron Blood, which is Germany. He told them. Where are you from? It sounds like you came from somewhere else because those names mean nothing to us, sorry. Tenrya asked. Sorry, got ahead of myself there. Have you ever gotten any reports about a portal like anomaly in the waters before? The commander asked. Yeah. We heard about it, but we can't do anything because we're spread too thin at the moment. Prince Eugen said. Well, we come from the other side. We wanted to know what was behind it, and gathered some forces to go through. We've only been on this side for a day and already it's gotten exciting. The commander said. They listened and turned to look at their 6 saviors. They must be from Iron Blood then. This caused Prince Eugen to bounce in place. This meant new friends from her navy. So, who are they? Kanga asked, pointing to their saviors. The commander waved at them and let them introduce themselves. The one with the massive shark/dragon heads came up first. I'm Friedrich der Gross, personification of the H-class battleship, H-. They didn't know a whole lot about this class, but they knew this ship class was powerful. The destroyer was up next. Guten Tag, I'm Z, an Ironblood destroyer. You may call me Nimi if you wish. They didn't have anything to say about her. She did look cute though. The blonde twin-tailed one went next. I'm Admiral Hipper, lead ship of the class. Say anything about my chest and I'll hurt you, she said. The Japanese Kenmusu didn't really say anything, but Prince Eugen was bouncing around. This was her older sister from another world. Awesome. Before she could say anything though, the gray-haired one went next. Hello, I'm Prince Eugen, a member of the Admiral Hipper class. She smiled. Now everyone was shocked. They turned to their own Prince Eugen, who was looking at her wide-eyed. This was her alternate self? She had no words. You're me? She asked. HM? Me? Ah. Then you must be this world's version of me. You look cute, Prince said, as she looked over her alternate self. AL Prince Eugen will be called Prince, and KC Prince Eugen will be called Eugen. Eugen blushed at that but still stared wide-eyed at Prince. Humph. Well, I hope you're not as bad as this one, Hipper said, pointing to Prince. Prince merely stuck out her tongue at her older sister. As those two bickered, everyone turned to the last two, who had yet to introduce themselves. The white-haired woman went first. I am the Bismarck-class battleship, Tirpitz. A pleasure. She bowed her head. The others once again widened their eyes in shock. This was Bismarck's sister? This then caused them to slowly turn to the remaining woman, who noticed it. Yes, that makes me Bismarck, lead ship of the Bismarck-class battleships. She bowed her head with a small smile. This was Bismarck? She looked bigger than theirs, more mature too. She also looked more like a leader than theirs. Eugen was staring at Bismarck with sparkling eyes and an odd expression on her face. This Bismarck looked far more cooler than her own. Not that her Bismarck wasn't cool or anything. This one just seemed cooler. Bismarck pointed at her and looked at the others with a raised eyebrow. She called our Bismarck big sister. She probably will call you that too, Fubuki said. Bismarck nodded. Already doing introductions? A new woman's voice said. Everyone turned to the voice and saw two women there. They widened their eyes when they noticed that the white-haired one had fox ears and tails. She was a kitsune. The Japanese Kenmusu were in awe. Those tails looked so fluffy. The other one had a short red dress that caused some of the Kenmusu to blush, mainly the destroyers and Eugen. The one with the red dress went first. Hey there! Name's Zuikaku, nice to meet ya. She smiled. The Kenmusu only looked at her chest and started to laugh internally and started teasing their Zuikaku internally. On the outside it just looked like they had taken a liking to Zuikaku's S, causing said crane to blush and cover herself. When they noticed, the Kenmusu apologized. Then the fox girl went next. Hello? I'm Kaga. Nice to meet you. She bowed. The Kenmusu looked at this Kaga and theirs. So you're me? Kaga KC asked. It would seem so. It looks like the color scheme is the same, Kaga Al said. Both Kagas smirked at one another. Then the Kenmusu introduced themselves. The Kongu sisters went first. The AL team just looked at them with sweat drops. Well, they certainly more lively than our versions, Issei said. That caused the Kongu sisters to beam in happiness. Next up was the aircraft carriers. I'm Kaga, as you already know now, and I'm Akiji. Pleased to meet you. She bowed. The AL team took a step back and looked at her, confusing the Kenmusu. Issei was the first to realize what they did. Sorry. It's just our Akiji is kind of a yandere, he said sheepishly. This shocked the Kenmusu. Akiji as something other than nice? Impossible. What? Akiji, Casey stammered. Don't worry about it for now. Let's just continue, Kaga Al suggested. They nodded and continued with the introductions. I'm Prince Eugen. But you already knew that, Eugen cheerfully shouted. Hello? I'm Atego. Nice to meet you. Atego waved. And I'm Takao. Hello? She smiled. Not too dissimilar from our own. I'm half expecting this Atego to jump on one of us and hug us, Zuikaku said. This caused both of the KC versions to smile, but they had to ask. What do you mean exactly? Takao asked. You both kind of act just like ours. It's just that our Atego is an Wani-san type and is constantly trying to hug everyone, mostly me and destroyers. Issei explained. Well, before we get sidetracked, I'm Tenryu. How's it going? She waved. I'm Yudachi Poi. Ours doesn't say that, I don't think. Have any of you heard her say that? Zuikaku asked. They shook their heads no. Our Yudachi does love meat though, so be careful of any meat items around her, or snacks in general, because she will try to get some. Kaga Al said. The KC crew nodded. Now all that was left was Fubuki. Hello? I'm Fubuki, a special type destroyer. Fubuki introduced herself. How cute. Both Prinz and Friedrich cooed. Fubuki blushed. A bit different from ours, maybe, but just as cute it seems. Issei chuckled. Before any more could be said, there was a flash of lightning and then thunder before it started to rain. Let's take this inside and introduce you to the others. It'll also keep us dry. Come on, Issei said. They all ran into the ship and started to go to the meeting room. Issei, the Kanmusu and his two Kansen walked down a hall in the aircraft carrier towards the mess hall, where the rest of his Kansen were. His Iron Blood girls went to their rooms to dry off and rest up. Don't worry, you'll meet her and the others later. Right now I want to introduce y'all to the rest of the Sakura Empire girls I brought. They nodded and entered the room. There around a table were 4 girls. They were sitting down, talking, and turned to the door when they heard it open. One of the girls, a small one with animal ears on her head, walked up to them. Shikikan, you're back with our guests. It wasn't a question. He nodded and turned to the Kanmusu. He placed his hand on the small girl's head and introduced her. This is Nagato, one of my secretaries. Issei said, greetings. I hope we can get along. Nagato bowed. The Kanmusu stared in shock. This was their Nagato. She didn't look scary like theirs at all. But she did look cute though. So cute. Konga shouted. Mini Nagato blushed. The others were internally gushing at how cute she looked. Especially with that blush on her face. I just want to scoop you up and hug you. Konga continued. She did exactly that and started to rub her cheek against Nagato's. Hello? I'm Fubuki. Nice to meet you. A blue-haired girl said. The Kanmusu looked at this Fubuki and then theirs. This one was far more cheerful and outgoing compared to theirs. So you're this world's version of me? Fubuki, KC asked. Yup. We'll have so much fun together. Right, Ayanami? Fubuki AL asked. A blonde-haired girl with a revealing sailor outfit nodded. Yes. I'm Ayanami, yes. Ayanami said. Some of the Kanmusu blushed at her attire but smiled at her. A lot of their counterparts must be different. This one didn't show as much emotion as theirs. The Kanmusu returned the greeting. Next up was a woman with a katana and a white military uniform. Hello? I am Takao, lead ship of the Takao-class heavy cruisers. A pleasure. She bowed. Well, it looks like they still had the same body type, just switched the uniforms, from the looks of it. It looks like all our counterparts did was kind of switch uniforms, doesn't it, Atego? Takao KC asked. Atego nodded. HM? Does that make you this world's version of me? Takao AL asked. Also, if you don't mind me asking, do you have any features like the rest of the Sakura Empire? The other Takao asked. Takao AL wiggled the tufts of hair on the sides of her head, showing that those were her ears. Cute. The other Takao class said. AL, Takao blushed, but gave them a small smile, which they returned. My turn now? A mature voice said. The Kanmusu turned to the final girl, woman, and nearly fainted with giant blushed. This final woman was a kitsune, like Kaga AL, but had very large torpedo bulges. Her kimono did little to cover it. Era? Enjoying the view? Fufufufu. The beautiful woman teased. The Kanmusu blushed harder. My name is Yamato. A pleasure to make your acquaintance. She bowed. Everyone was definitely shocked about this one. She was bigger than theirs. They didn't think that was even possible. Hello, Yamato-sama. They all returned the bow. The destroyers couldn't keep their eyes off of the fluffy foxtails. Neither could some of the others. Fluffy. Fubuki KC said. Era? Would you like to feel them? Yamato asked. She moved one of her tails over to the destroyer. When she touched the tail, she was in heaven. It was so fluffy and soft, she didn't want to stop petting it. Feel free to touch them, but don't pull on them or touch the base of my tails," Yamato told them. For the next few minutes all the Kanmusu and Kansen did was sit around, talk, get to know each other, and fluff the fox girls' tails. My apologies for not updating sooner, but a combination of work, Halo Reach, and Ace Combat have left me distracted from my stories. Both groups moved to get some food while they waited for a helicopter to be refueled so that the Kanmusu can go and meet the second commander of this group and her ships. Almost as soon as they finished eating, they got word that the helicopter was ready. The group walked out onto the flight deck. The Kanmusu noticed a pair of jets getting ready for takeoff. Normally that wouldn't interest them, but the markings on one plane did. That interested them, but they figured that it was something that pilot did to personalize their plane. They noticed the helicopter that they were supposed to board was waiting for them on the other side of the deck. They quickly moved towards it and boarded. Soon after they did, the two jets flew past them and into the sky. After saying their goodbyes to their new friends, the Kanmusu boarded the helicopter that would take them to another aircraft carrier. Once they landed, they noticed two people walk up to them. A tall man in red armor, and a woman in the same clothes that Commander Haidu was wearing. The woman was the first one to speak. "Laura, welcome. I'm Commander Laura Thompson, and this is my secretary, H-." She motioned to the man in red armor, and it was then that they noticed H in white on his armor. "H-, hello? It's a pleasure to meet you." He gave them a wave and a smile. Kanmusu, wait, what? A ship boy? They were extremely surprised to see a male ship, before they processed his name. H-, that meant he was a part of Friedrich der Gross's class, right? They shook off the shock and just figured that it was something that could happen in their world. After all, different world could mean different rules. The fact that he was never built could have also played a part in that. Who knows, maybe other ships that weren't able to be built might also come out as male once they were built. They returned their greetings and introduced themselves. Once everyone was acquainted, they moved into a meeting room where the Kanmusu would meet the Royal Navy girls first. Upon entering, they noticed 6 girls, 3 of whom looked like destroyers. When the group noticed their commander enter, they stood up. One of them, however, ran up to them energetically. She had purple hair in a ponytail, and was wearing a white shirt and purple skirt. "Javelin, hello? My name's Javelin, it's a pleasure to meet you," she smiled at them. Another girl shyly came up to them. She had pink hair and was wearing a white and blue dress. "Juno, hello, I'm Juno." "A pleasure." She gave a small bow and smiled at them too. Then a blonde-haired girl with twin tails and wearing a uniform came up to them with a confident smile. "Amazon, I'm Amazon. It's nice to meet you. If you ever need help with anything, let me know. I am a teacher after all." She pointed to herself and grinned. The Kanmusu could barely get a word out, because these destroyers had introduced themselves quickly and didn't give the newcomers any time to introduce themselves. Now, girls. Don't overwhelm them," a woman with blonde hair and wearing a blue dress told them. "Hood, greetings, I am Hood. Battlecruiser for the Royal Navy." She gave a curtsy in greeting. A brown-haired woman then introduced herself. "Repulse, hi. I'm Repulse. Nice to meet you." She gave them an energetic smile and wave, which they returned. Finally, a blonde-haired woman came up to introduce herself. When the Kanmusu noticed what she was wearing, they blushed. "Victorious, hello? I'm the aircraft carrier Victorious. Nice to meet you." This one gave them a happy introduction and hugs. Once the Kanmusu introduced themselves, everyone sat down and started to bond over tea. Both sides stood and awkwardly stared at one another. In front of the Kanmusu were 6 girls from the Eagle Union, or the United States Navy. Because of this awkwardness, the EU girls only introduced themselves with their names only. "Casson, I'm Casson. Downs, I'm Downs. Laffy. Washington, I'm Washington. Nice to meet ya, I guess. Long Island, I'm the Ghost. Long Island. Ranger, and I'm Ranger. Hello?" The Kanmusu also introduced themselves. There were a few seconds of everyone trying to keep Laffy away from the other high. She tried to get closer to her for some unknown reason. After successfully keeping Laffy away, the group moved to a meeting room where they would continue their talks and getting to know one another. All the while, the Japanese Kanmusu were just awkwardly there and talking. Over with Issei, he was currently having a video chat with the Kanmusu's admiral, who was allowing them onto his base to talk, and so that he could thank them for saving his girls. Issei took the time to examine the admiral better. Once they docked, Kanmusa and the base were eager to meet alternate versions of themselves as well as these new people. It wasn't every day that they got to meet new people, the base was off limits for regular civilians, and new military personnel were rare. They watched as this new group's commanding officer came up to their admiral and gave him a smile and offered his hand. Their admiral returned it and shook the man's hand. Both sides then went up to meet each other with the EDF forces and the base personnel getting the visitors' gear and equipment off the ships and helping them get settled in. That picture up top is a little sneak peek of my next Azur story. The first person to guess who it is will be able to pick what ship they want in that story. Unfortunately, the Eagle Union and the Royal Navy spots are taken, but that does leave the other navies for the taking. While Issei was out exploring a new world, Rias and the ORC were called by one of his Kansen, Kashino. Apparently, that green cat girl, Akashi, had set up 2 memories that Issei left for them to watch. All they knew was that one would be his time during the Second Ravager War. Akashi didn't say what the second one would be. That led them to now, where they were watching said green cat get everything ready. It didn't take too long. All she had to do was make sure the right memory was playing. The first thing they saw was what appeared to be a mall. Standing in front of them was Issei and a bunch of soldiers that wore different armor than the ones they had seen when they first toured the base. Standing in front of them was Issei and a bunch of soldiers that wore different armor than the ones they had seen when they first toured the base. Even Issei looked different. He wore the same armor, but he had on what looked like a radio on his back. The only thing was that it had what looked like a big computer screen on the top part, and had a small keyboard underneath it. They were facing giant gray ants that were coming from a hole in the floor. Team leader, alright. Let's give them something to eat. The small group of soldiers, including Issei, opened fire on the bugs and killed them all without losing a single trooper. TL, Haidu, any word on when Storm Team will arrive? Issei, a few minutes. We can wait, or we can clear the path up ahead and set up an outpost. The team leader thought about it for a bit before saying that they would wait. They didn't have to wait long because almost as soon as their conversation ended, Storm Team came. Storm Team was a peculiar team. Instead of being a team made up from one branch of the EDF, they had one member from each branch. There was Storm a Ranger, Storm a Fencer, Storm a Wing Diver, Storm an Air Raider. This team was one of the EDF's best. Akino, so that's Storm Team. Issei did talk about them quite a bit, didn't he? Kiba, yeah, he did. He said that they were the ones who ended the war. Rias, well, we should continue. I'm curious to see just what they were facing at this point in time. From what Issei said, this war almost drove humanity to extinction. They decided to keep quiet and watch everything before commenting. TL, I hope they briefed you on this operation. This is an important one. If we can take out this queen, then we can hopefully cripple their forces. For a time, anyway. After making sure everyone knew what they were doing, the group of soldiers moved further into what appeared to be tunnels, most likely made by the giant insects. They battled multiple swarms of ants, which resulted in a few EDF soldiers dying. Fortunately, they met up with a few more ranger teams in the tunnels, including a few that wielded flamethrowers. As they made their way into a big open cavern, they were attacked by gray and red ants almost immediately. This took the group by surprise and caused the big group to lose half of their forces, and pushed the remaining numbers into a group, where they fired from every direction into the swarm. Storm, don't let up. Keep firing, Issei. Fire in the hole. The watchers watched as Issei threw a grenade into a group of ants, and watched as they exploded into limbs and other insect body parts. It took half an hour and a bunch of ammo, but in the end, they managed to beat the swarm with very little casualties to their remaining forces. Trooper, wow. That naval attaché has a good arm. The other trooper and the watchers agreed with him. Storm turned to Issei and asked him how much further to the Queen's Nest. To which Issei replied that it was just up ahead, past the checkpoint that a previous recon unit had set up. They collected the dog tags and ammo of the fallen and continued on to the checkpoint. Once they reached the checkpoint, they saw the bodies of fallen rangers on the ground and a barely damaged spider tank nearby. Once they reached the checkpoint, they saw the bodies of fallen rangers on the ground and a barely damaged spider tank nearby. Storm went up to inspect the vehicle and concluded that it was still operational. He entered the tank and turned it on. After a quick systems check, they got on their way. They encountered heavy resistance on the way, but that was to be expected. They didn't have any casualties thanks to the addition of the spider tank. When they arrived to where the queen and her nest was, they found her in a giant cavity surrounded by ants. She was different from the normal ants. She was huge. Not only that, she also had giant wasps with her too. At the sight of the giant insects, the Watchers held their breaths and waited to see what would happen. The Watchers didn't have to wait long, because the moment the EDF troopers saw the queen, they opened fire with everything they had. The screen was nothing but gun flashes, blood of all types of colors, and death screams of the humans and Ravagers. Once it ended, the group of EDF troopers had diminished down to only Storm Team, Issei, and the team leader. Everyone else valiantly gave their lives to stop the Queen Ant. TL, well, it looks like we may have just bought a few days' worth of time with this battle. But we still have a long way to go if we want to win this war. Everyone EDF! 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 As the screen turned black, everyone was in their own thoughts. Until Kashino broke them out of it. Kashino, so that's why he doesn't like talking about it. Rias, Kashino, was it? What do you mean? Everyone was also curious and turned to the literal cowgirl. Kashino, we tried to ask him what the war was like, but he wouldn't say. All he would say was that it was bad and almost drove humanity to extinction. That got everyone to think about what had happened in that other world. From what it sounded like, humanity was prospering again, but their numbers must be low. Akashi, I think it's time to see the other memory, Naya. I'm curious to see what Shikikan left us, Naya. The others nodded and waited for Akashi to set everything up. Here it is. The final chapter of this story. Now I do want you all to know that I will be making a sequel to this story, but that will be after the next Azur Lane story I have planned. I do have a surprise in that story that I don't think anyone has done yet. I'm not gonna say what it is, you'll just have to find out. As the ORC were waiting for Akashi to finish setting everything up, a new woman came in the room. This woman was a fox girl. One they hadn't seen before. HM? Oh. You must be the ones that Shikikan told us about. I am Shinano Yamato class. The fox girl went over to one of the couches, and promptly laid down and fell asleep. The others' sweat dropped and decided to ignore the sleeping fox and turn their attention back to the screen. The screen came to life and they saw a bunch of the Kansen surrounding two figures. One of them was Akagi, and the other was Taiho. They were both fighting over who loved the commander more. The Watchers' sweat dropped at what the two carriers were fighting over. Everyone, Kansen and Watchers, watched as it escalated to the point that the two summoned their riggings and started to send planes at each other. This unfortunately had the adverse effect of the planes going after the other Kansen. Luckily most of them ran away or summoned their own riggings to destroy the planes. One plane had dropped its bomb right where the Mitsuki-class destroyers were. The Watchers gasped when the bomb landed and exploded on the little destroyers. Akino, I hope they're okay. Asia, me too. The others nodded in agreement. The scene switched to show Issei and Enterprise working in his office before his door was blown open by Belfast, startling the two. Issei, Belfast Wadash. Belfast, come quick! The Mitsuki class has been hurt. Everyone watched as Issei shot out of his seat and ran to the infirmary, where they had most likely taken the little destroyers. Kansen watched in worry as their commander blew past them in a hurry. They knew why he was running. When he arrived, he saw Akashi and Vestal attending to the destroyers. The sight of Vestal caused Asia to smile. The two repair ships were just about finished when their commander burst through the door. Issei, what happened? He was breathing heavily. They looked at each other and the sleeping destroyers, before telling him what happened. They, and the now arriving Enterprise and Belfast, watched as Issei went deathly still and looked down. Everyone watched as he suddenly lifted his head and saw that his eyes were glowing an emerald green. This caused the four Kansen to back up a bit and watch as Issei stormed out to where the two carriers were. They followed him to the beach. There they saw the two carriers still going at it. When everyone, except the carriers, noticed him and his glowing eyes, they stiffened. When the two carriers finally noticed, they went pale as they saw their beloved commander glaring at them with fury in his eyes. Everyone also noticed that he was growling. It sounded animalistic. Not any sound that a human can make. The sound startled the ORC. He sounded like a dragon. Which kind of made sense. The Kansen has never heard the sound before, but it was scary to hear. Issei, would either of you like to explain why the entire Mitsuki class is in the infirmary? He was starting to snarl now. He walked around the two and everyone could see his teeth had elongated into dagger-like fangs and his eyes were slitted, like a reptile's eyes. His new appearance greatly frightened the Kansen and the ORC. Never before had they seen their normally kind commander look like this. The two Sakura carriers couldn't speak properly. They were scared stiff. Issei, very well. He suddenly grabbed the two carriers by their throats and lifted them effortlessly off the ground and into the air. Issei, then I guess a punishment is in order. You two are confined to your rooms and are not to come out for 2 weeks. The only time you can come out is if I give you permission. Do you understand? The two choking carriers nodded as best as they can before Issei let them go. They landed in the sand and started coughing. Everyone watched and made way for their furious commander. The scene switched to show the base under attack by black and red ships. The ORC watched as the Kansen fought with everything they had before. Who was most likely the leader of the strange ships came forward. Tester, how do you like the new ships, Azur? They are the latest models. Made from all the data we collected from our fights. They were designed to beat you. Ha! The Kansen were tired and disarrayed from having to fight for hours. Tester Beta continued to gloat about how this would finally be the end before everyone heard what sounded like something powering up. Before a giant red beam flew out from behind the Kansen and destroyed Tester and a part of her fleet, leaving the rest for Azur to finish off. When they looked towards the source of the beam, they saw Issei there with his left arm in some kind of red armor. Helena, was that you, Commander? Issei nodded. That was when they noticed that he had his glowing eyes. It was quite the scary sight, especially since the sun was almost gone. It was at this point that the Kansen were afraid of their commander whenever his eyes were glowing. They never wanted to see him like that ever again. It terrified them. It was like he was a different person. They still loved him, but from that point onwards, they tried to keep their commander from getting angry. They liked it better when he was calm and nice. As the screen cut off, everyone thought about what they had saw. It looked like Issei was ready to go into his balance breaker. They had never seen him like that before. The closest they had seen to something like this was when everyone thought Asia was killed by Diadora. They then got up and started to make their way to their classes, discussing about what they had just witnessed. Thanks for watching this video. You really enjoy this video. Like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow N7 Captain for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.